By the Late Bronze Age, approximately 1200 BCE, Central Europe was populated by communities associated with the Hallstatt culture, widely recognized as the early Celtic cultural horizon. Archaeological evidence indicates that settlements were often located on elevated terrain, providing both defensive advantage and control over surrounding arable land. Burial practices, including richly furnished graves with weapons, ornaments, and imported goods, suggest the emergence of social stratification within these communities. Linguistic studies identify the Proto-Celtic language as the precursor to Gaulish, attesting to the long-standing continuity of Celtic speech across this region. The transition to the Latin culture, beginning around 450 BCE, marks a significant technological and artistic evolution. Archaeologists have uncovered fortified settlements, known as oppida, across modern-day France, Switzerland, and southern Germany, demonstrating both increased population density and the centralization of local authority. Metalworking techniques, particularly in iron and bronze, became increasingly sophisticated, enabling the production of both practical implements and ceremonial artifacts. Evidence of long-distance trade, including Mediterranean imports such as Greek pottery and Etruscan bronzes, indicates that these early Gaulish communities were connected to broader continental networks. This combination of indigenous development and external influence shaped the foundational structures of Gaulish society. Settlement patterns in the early Celtic world were strongly influenced by geography. Rivers such as the Loire, Rhône, and Rhine served as transportation corridors, facilitating trade and communication between tribal groups. Forests and plains shaped agricultural practices, providing a balance of cultivated land and hunting resources. Archaeological surveys reveal that regional variation in settlement density corresponded with environmental conditions, demonstrating how the natural landscape directly influenced social organization. This systemic interaction between geography and human settlement underpinned the economic and political evolution of early Gaulish communities. Social organization during this period exhibits the characteristics of both tribal hierarchy and local autonomy. Excavated oppida suggest the presence of chieftains or elite families overseeing production, trade, and ritual activity. Graves of high-status individuals frequently contain weapons and ornate jewelry, while common burials are comparatively modest, reflecting a stratified society. Interpretive analysis indicates that these structures facilitated both intercommunity cooperation and competition. Records from later Roman authors, including Julius Caesar, provide supplementary accounts of hierarchical organization, which, while recorded centuries later, align with archaeological patterns observed in Latin settlements. Material culture in this era reflects a combination of indigenous innovation and external influence. Artifacts such as iron tools, swords, and agricultural implements demonstrate technological competence, while decorative motifs on torques, fibulae, and ceremonial weapons indicate complex symbolic systems. Archaeologists uncovered numerous examples of imported Mediterranean goods within burial contexts, revealing not only the presence of trade networks but also the capacity for elite communities to accumulate and display wealth. These findings suggest that economic organization and social stratification were mutually reinforcing, enabling the Gauls to sustain increasingly complex communities. Linguistic and epigraphic evidence, though limited, corroborates the presence of a distinct Celtic identity. Inscriptions from later Latin contexts, though fragmentary, reveal personal names and tribal identifiers consistent with Gaulish language traditions. Comparative analysis with other Celtic languages demonstrates both continuity and regional variation, illustrating how cultural identity persisted despite local differences. These early developments established the linguistic, material, and social foundations that would define Gaulish civilization in the centuries to follow. In summary, the period between 1200 BCE and 450 BCE represents the formative stage of Gaulish society. The combination of environmental adaptation, technological innovation, social hierarchy, and interaction with Mediterranean cultures created the conditions for more centralized and politically cohesive communities. This transition demonstrates how indigenous development and external exchange worked in tandem to shape early Celtic identity. By the onset of the Latin period, Gaulish communities had established a durable cultural, linguistic, and material framework that would underpin subsequent political, economic, and military organization. As these early communities stabilized and expanded, they laid the groundwork for complex tribal structures, intertribal alliances, and social hierarchies that would define the Gauls in the centuries leading to Roman contact. Gaul during the Latine period was not a unified state, but rather a mosaic of independent tribal entities, each exercising its own governance and social order. Archaeological excavations of Opata, including Bibracte and Moshing, demonstrate centralized settlement patterns that suggest the presence of local authority figures overseeing political, economic, and religious activities. These fortified sites functioned as administrative and economic centers, facilitating coordination among smaller villages and hamlets in their respective territories. The evidence indicates that tribal cohesion relied on both kinship networks and localized leadership, providing a balance between centralized control and decentralized autonomy. Chieftains occupied the highest tier of the social hierarchy, often supported by warrior elites who served both as military leaders and enforcers of authority. Grave goods from high-status burials, including swords, ornate torques, and imported Mediterranean objects, signify both material wealth and social prominence. Archaeologists interpret these findings as indicators of hierarchical stratification, where power was concentrated in elite lineages but required affirmation through military capability and ritual legitimacy. Records from Roman sources, including Julius Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico, describe these leaders as commanding loyalty through personal charisma, kinship obligations, and displays of martial skill, although the accounts reflect the author's Roman perspective and require careful interpretation in light of archaeological data. Religious authority played a complementary role in maintaining social order. Druids, as described by Caesar and corroborated by archaeological evidence of ritual sites, held multifaceted functions. They acted as religious officiants, legal arbiters, and custodians of oral knowledge. Sacred groves and ritual enclosures provided locations for both ceremonial and judicial activities, indicating that spiritual and legal responsibilities were deeply intertwined. Interpretive analysis suggests that the dual role of Druids reinforced social cohesion, allowing religious authority to legitimize political power while simultaneously guiding moral and legal norms. This integration of religion and governance exemplifies the systemic interdependence of societal structures in early Gaul. The organization of commoners was equally critical to tribal functionality. Agricultural laborers, craftsmen, and traders formed the economic base that supported both elite consumption and military mobilization. Settlement patterns, including satellite villages around Opata, reflect the logistical coordination required to sustain large populations and produce surpluses for trade. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of specialized crafts, such as ironworking and pottery production, that indicates economic stratification and interdependence. This structure allowed tribal leaders to mobilize resources for defense, warfare, or diplomatic ventures, highlighting the practical consequences of social hierarchy. Intertribal relations were characterized by both competition and alliance. Records indicate that Gaulish tribes engaged in temporary confederations when facing external threats or pursuing collective military campaigns. Caesar recounts that in times of crisis, tribal assemblies could convene to coordinate strategy, suggesting a level of institutional flexibility within the otherwise decentralized system. Interpretive insights suggest that this balance between local autonomy and cooperative structures allowed Gaulish society to respond adaptively to both internal disputes and external pressures. The duality of independence and interdependence became a defining feature of political organization in pre-Roman Gaul. Archaeological evidence further demonstrates that hierarchy and law were codified through material culture and spatial organization. Fortifications, roads, and assembly spaces within Opata provided both practical defense and venues for governance. Burial practices reflect status differentiation, while artifacts such as inscribed weapons and ceremonial items indicate ritualized expressions of authority. These patterns collectively reveal a society in which power, religion, and economy were intertwined, creating a resilient framework for both everyday governance and extraordinary circumstances. including warfare or negotiation with neighboring tribes. In conclusion, the tribal organization and social hierarchy of early Gaul combined chieftain leadership, warrior elites, religious authority, and a structured commoner base to produce a cohesive yet decentralized system. The integration of ritual, law, and economic productivity demonstrates that social structures were not merely symbolic but functionally necessary for survival, governance, and expansion. This systemic arrangement allowed Gaulish communities to maintain identity and cohesion across diverse regions. As tribes grew more organized, the stage was set for intertribal alliances, competitive conflicts, and eventual encounters with expanding Mediterranean powers, foreshadowing the broader political dynamics that would define Gaul in subsequent centuries. As these tribal structures solidified, Gaulish society possessed the institutional and social mechanisms necessary to support trade networks, centralized settlements, and coordinated military actions, setting the foundation for the next phase of expansion and cultural consolidation. By the late Hallstatt and early Latine periods, the Gauls had developed a material economy that combined local production with long-distance trade. Archaeological excavations across modern France, Switzerland, and southern Germany reveal evidence of iron smelting and bronze working, including furnaces, slag deposits, and finished tools. Iron implements, ranging from plows to swords, reflect technological proficiency and facilitated both agricultural productivity and military capacity. Bronze artifacts, often decorative, suggest an early integration of symbolic expression into material culture. These technological capabilities enabled communities to sustain larger populations while enhancing social stratification, as access to metal goods often indicated status and influence. Agriculture formed the backbone of the early Gaulish economy. Settlement surveys and pollen analyses indicate extensive cultivation of cereals such as wheat, barley, and millet, alongside the domestication of livestock, including cattle, sheep, and pigs. Archaeologists uncovered storage pits and granaries within Opida, demonstrating systematic surplus management. This surplus supported not only subsistence but also trade and craft specialization, allowing certain individuals or families to focus on metallurgy, textile production, or pottery. Interpretive insights suggest that the integration of agricultural surplus with craft production underpinned both economic stability and social complexity in pre-Roman Gaul. Trade networks were integral to the Gauls' material and cultural development. Archaeological finds include imported Greek ceramics, Etruscan bronzes, and coins from Mediterranean centers, indicating that Gaulish communities actively participated in interregional exchange. Numismatic evidence shows the early adoption of coinage in certain tribal centers, facilitating economic transactions beyond local barter systems. Records from Mediterranean authors, including Strabo and Polybius, corroborate these findings, describing Gaulish participation in long-distance trade. This connectivity enabled the flow of both goods and ideas, contributing to technological innovation and the diffusion of cultural practices throughout the region. Craft specialization demonstrates both technical skill and social organization. Workshops associated with Latine sites reveal systematic production of iron weapons, bronze ornaments, and ceramic vessels. These workshops often operated under the supervision of elite households, indicating that production was embedded within hierarchical social structures. Archaeologists uncovered standardized tool forms and decorative motifs, suggesting coordinated production methods and shared aesthetic conventions across different tribes. Interpretive analysis indicates that craft specialization reinforced elite authority, as control over valuable goods provided both material wealth and social leverage within tribal hierarchies. Economic activities were also shaped by geography and environment. Rivers such as the Seine, Loire, and Rhine facilitated the transport of goods between inland settlements and the Mediterranean trading network. Forest resources supplied timber for construction and fuel for metalworking, while fertile plains supported surplus agriculture. This interplay between environment and human activity demonstrates the systemic nature of early Gaulish economy, where geography both enabled and constrained trade, production, and settlement expansion. Archaeological surveys confirm that settlement locations were chosen with attention to resource availability, trade routes, and defensive considerations. The economic framework of early Gaul had direct implications for political and military organization. Surplus production and specialized craft enabled tribal elites to equip warriors, fund fortifications, and maintain alliances with neighboring tribes. Interpretive insights suggest that economic capacity was a key factor in territorial expansion, as wealthier tribes could project power more effectively and sustain long-term campaigns. This integration of material economy with social and political structures exemplifies the functional interdependence of economic, technological, and governance systems in Latin Gaul. In summary, the material culture and early economy of the Gauls illustrate a society that combined technological innovation, agricultural productivity, and trade connectivity to support social stratification, political authority, and military readiness. Iron and bronze working, craft specialization, and engagement with Mediterranean networks established both the economic foundation and the cultural framework necessary for more complex societal developments. By linking environmental adaptation with technological proficiency and trade, the Gauls created a durable economic infrastructure that would sustain population growth, regional influence, and eventual confrontation with neighboring powers. Economic sophistication enabled the Gauls to sustain larger communities, strengthen social hierarchies, and develop the political and military capacity that would facilitate expansion and interaction with external civilizations in subsequent centuries. By the 5th century BCE, the Gaulish tribes had extended their presence beyond Central Europe, occupying territories corresponding to modern France, Belgium, Switzerland, and northern Italy. Archaeological surveys demonstrate settlement continuity across this region, with Latin cultural artifacts found in diverse local contexts, indicating both the persistence of local traditions and the adoption of innovations across new territories. Fortified settlements, or oppida, became increasingly prominent, suggesting that population centers were consolidating as tribal groups migrated and settled in areas with favorable geography. These sites reflect both defensive priorities and control over agricultural and trade resources, illustrating the strategic planning underlying territorial expansion. The migration and settlement patterns of the Gauls were influenced by environmental conditions and resource availability. Archaeological evidence, including pollen analyses and landscape surveys, indicates that fertile plains and river valleys were preferred for permanent settlements, while forested areas were used for hunting, timber, and metal resources. Rivers such as the Loire, Rhône, and Rhine provided vital transportation corridors, enabling movement of people, goods, and information across extensive distances. Interpretive insights suggest that this geographical adaptability facilitated the establishment of interconnected tribal networks, which maintained cultural cohesion even as groups dispersed over a broad area. Interactions with neighboring civilizations played a significant role in shaping Gaulish expansion. Archaeologists have uncovered Greek pottery, Etruscan bronzes, and other Mediterranean imports within Latin contexts in southern France and northern Italy. These findings indicate that trade and cultural exchange accompanied territorial expansion, allowing Gaulish communities to acquire not only material goods but also technological and artistic knowledge. Historical accounts from Greek and Roman authors, including Herodotus and later Strabo, reference the presence of Celtic groups along the Upper Rhône and Po valleys, corroborating the archaeological evidence of cross-cultural engagement. This interaction demonstrates that expansion was not purely demographic but also involved integration into broader European economic and cultural networks. Settlement patterns reveal both continuity and adaptation as Gaulish tribes moved westward. Excavations at sites such as Bibracte and Latin show the replication of architectural styles, fortification techniques, and burial customs, indicating that core cultural practices were maintained despite regional differences. At the same time, local adaptations are evident, with variations in dwelling construction, agricultural layout, and fortification design reflecting responses to specific environmental and social conditions. Interpretive analysis suggests that this balance between cultural continuity and environmental adaptation allowed Gaulish tribes to maintain identity while integrating successfully into new landscapes. The process of expansion also facilitated the emergence of more complex social and political organization. As tribes occupied larger territories, resource management and conflict resolution became increasingly important. Evidence from Apata indicates the development of centralized leadership within individual tribes, supported by warrior elites and ritual authorities. These centers acted as hubs for administration, trade, and ceremonial activity, strengthening cohesion and enabling coordination across dispersed settlements. Interpretive insights highlight that territorial spread was closely linked to institutional development, as larger domains required more structured governance to sustain stability and economic productivity. Evidence for early Gaulish expansion into northern Italy, including the Po Valley, underscores the strategic and adaptive nature of their movement. Archaeological finds, such as Latin-style weapons and ornaments, suggest that migration was accompanied by both military engagement and cultural assimilation. Historical accounts describe incursions into Etruscan and Roman territories during this period, indicating that Gaulish expansion was not only demographic but also political and martial. The integration of new territories provided access to trade routes, raw materials, and fertile agricultural lands, enhancing the economic foundation of Gaulish society. In summary, the expansion of Gaulish tribes across Western Europe by the 5th century BCE represents a combination of environmental adaptation, social organization, and external interaction. Settlement continuity, fortification development, and the replication of cultural practices demonstrate that migration was systematic and strategically managed. Integration into Mediterranean trade networks and contact with neighboring civilizations contributed to technological, artistic, and economic enrichment. Interpretive insights suggest that this territorial spread laid the foundation for more recognizable tribal political units, setting the stage for the development of confederations, alliances, and the social hierarchies that would define Gaul in subsequent centuries. As Gaulish territory expanded and networks of settlements solidified, distinct tribal identities began to coalesce, providing the structural basis for more centralized political organization and enhanced intertribal coordination in the periods that followed. Even as Gaulish tribes maintained political independence, archaeological and textual evidence indicates that intertribal alliances were both common and strategically necessary. Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico describes instances in which multiple tribes formed temporary confederations to resist external threats or pursue joint campaigns. Excavations at Apata, including Bibracte and Mosching, suggest that these alliances were facilitated through shared fortifications, coordinated trade networks, and ritual observances that reinforced collective identity. Interpretive analysis indicates that the combination of decentralized governance with episodic centralization allowed tribes to mobilize resources rapidly while retaining local autonomy. Leadership structures within these alliances were fluid, often revolving around powerful chieftains whose influence extended beyond their own tribal boundaries. High-status graves and ceremonial artifacts suggest that military prowess and control over trade routes were critical factors in establishing authority. Caesar recounts leaders, such as Diviciacus of the Aedui, who exercised both political and religious influence, mediating disputes between tribes and coordinating joint military responses. These accounts, corroborated by archaeological evidence, highlight the adaptive nature of Gaulish leadership, wherein personal prestige, wealth, and martial skill combined to create temporary hierarchies that superseded ordinary tribal governance. The pressures of Mediterranean trade and expanding Roman influence further shaped the formation of alliances. Coastal and riverine tribes with access to trade networks could acquire imported goods, including Greek ceramics, Etruscan metalwork, and coinage, enhancing both economic power and political leverage. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that these wealthier tribes often acted as mediators or patrons in broader alliances, distributing resources and facilitating negotiations among less prosperous communities. Interpretive insights suggest that access to trade and control of economic flows strengthened certain chieftains' ability to coordinate intertribal cooperation, illustrating the link between commerce and political authority. Confederations were often temporary and situational, reflecting the volatile balance between cooperation and rivalry. Caesar documents that tribes frequently shifted allegiances based on immediate threats or opportunities, with rivalries over land, resources, or honor influencing the stability of alliances. Archaeological evidence of destruction layers and fortified boundary settlements corroborates these fluctuating relationships, indicating that conflict and negotiation were recurring features of Gaulish political life. This dynamic underscores that alliance building was a strategic process requiring both diplomatic skill and military readiness, with the potential for rapid reconfiguration in response to internal or external pressures. Religious and ritual practices played a critical role in facilitating these alliances. Sacred assemblies and shared ceremonial spaces provided venues for negotiation, oath-taking, and the affirmation of collective obligations. Druids, serving as intermediaries, could legitimize agreements and mediate disputes, reinforcing the cohesion of alliances. Interpretive analysis suggests that the integration of spiritual authority into political processes strengthened intertribal cooperation, providing both symbolic and practical mechanisms for coordination. By embedding political action within ritual frameworks, the Gauls maintained stability in otherwise decentralized structures. The formation of alliances also had implications for military organization. Coalition warfare required standardized mobilization, coordination of warbands, and the pooling of resources from multiple tribes. Archaeological evidence of weapon caches, fortified apota, and coordinated settlement patterns supports the existence of pre-planned joint defense and offensive strategies. Interpretive insights indicate that this cooperative military capacity enhanced the ability of Gaulish tribes to project power across wider territories, respond to incursions, and maintain strategic control over critical trade routes and fertile lands. In summary, the formation of political alliances in early Gaul reflects a sophisticated balance between tribal independence and cooperative necessity. Fluid hierarchies under powerful chieftains, reinforced by economic leverage and ritual authority, enabled tribes to respond adaptively to both internal rivalries and external threats. Archaeological evidence, combined with Roman textual records, demonstrates that alliance building was integral to political evolution, preparing Gaulish society for more complex interactions, including trade, military campaigns, and eventual encounters with Rome. These alliances not only maintained stability, but also facilitated coordination that would shape cultural and religious practices across Gaul. Political evolution directly influenced the Gauls' religious and cultural practices, as intertribal coordination required shared rituals, mediation by druids, and the integration of diverse communities under temporary leadership structures, setting the stage for further societal consolidation. Faith and ceremony were integral components of Gaulish social organization, providing cohesion across independent tribal groups. Archaeological evidence indicates that sacred sites, including groves, springs, and hilltop enclosures, served as focal points for both ritual and administrative activity. Druids, functioning as religious officials, educators, and legal arbiters, occupied a central role in these settings. Excavations of ritual deposits, such as the bog offerings at Weddingen and the hoarded weapons at Gournay-sur-Arronde, demonstrate the material expression of spiritual practices, highlighting the investment of resources and labor into ceremonial observance. Interpretive analysis suggests that these rituals reinforced social hierarchies, while simultaneously creating shared cultural norms across tribal communities. Material culture provides further insight into the symbolic dimensions of Gaulish religion. Decorative torques, fibulae, ceremonial weapons, and sculptural motifs demonstrate not only artistic sophistication, but also the integration of spiritual and social identity. Archaeologists have uncovered numerous examples of these items in burial contexts, indicating their role as markers of status, religious authority, and communal belonging. The Latin artistic style, characterized by curvilinear patterns and stylized representations of animals, reflects shared aesthetic and symbolic conventions across disparate tribes. These findings support the interpretation that visual and material culture functioned as a unifying mechanism, expressing collective identity and reinforcing allegiance to both local elites and broader tribal networks. Ritual practices extended beyond ceremonial display to encompass legal and diplomatic functions. Caesar's accounts describe druids presiding over disputes, administering oaths, and sanctioning alliances, suggesting that spiritual authority underpinned governance. Archaeological evidence of structured ceremonial spaces, including earthworks and raised platforms, indicates that these activities were formalized and spatially organized. Interpretive insights highlight that by embedding legal and political functions within religious contexts, Gaulish society strengthened both internal cohesion and intertribal coordination. This integration of culture and governance exemplifies the systemic role of religion in maintaining social order and collective identity. The interplay between ritual and warfare further illustrates the functional importance of religious practice. Offerings of weapons, chariots, and livestock in sacred sites are frequently interpreted as preparatory acts for battle or thanksgiving for military success. Archaeologists uncovered hoards at sites such as Mont Lassois and Glauberg, which contain weapons deliberately deposited in watery or otherwise liminal contexts, suggesting a ritualized acknowledgement of both martial and spiritual obligations. Interpretive analysis indicates that such practices reinforced the legitimacy of chieftains and warriors, aligning religious observance with political and military authority. This dual function demonstrates how faith and ceremony were embedded in practical aspects of societal organization. Cultural consolidation was also evident in artistic and linguistic practices. Inscriptions, though limited, reveal consistent use of Gaulish personal names, tribal identifiers, and religious terminology, illustrating the persistence of a shared cultural framework. Latin artistry, disseminated across settlement sites, provides material evidence of shared symbolic vocabulary, enabling disparate tribes to communicate identity, status, and allegiance visually. Interpretive insights suggest that these cultural expressions reinforce tribal cohesion, even in the absence of centralized political authority. Art, ritual, and language function together as a system of symbolic integration, facilitating cooperation and reducing friction across the fragmented tribal landscape. In summary, the consolidation of religion and culture in early Gaul served as a stabilizing force, linking spiritual authority, social hierarchy, and communal identity. Druids and sacred sites anchored political, legal, and military activities, while artistic and material expressions reinforced shared norms and collective belonging. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that ceremonial practices were resource-intensive and strategically organized, reflecting their centrality in maintaining cohesion among independent tribes. Interpretive analysis highlights that this integration of culture and ritual not only structured everyday life, but also prepared Gaulish society for collective action during periods of territorial expansion and conflict. Cultural cohesion would be tested by external expansion and warfare, as the integration of ritual, social hierarchy, and artistic expression provided the organizational foundation that enabled Gaulish communities to respond to both internal rivalries and external pressures. Leadership in Gaul was both decentralized and strategically adaptive, reflecting the complex interplay between local autonomy and collective decision-making. Archaeological evidence and Roman accounts indicate that tribal governance was organized around both single tribes and larger confederacies, which temporarily unified multiple groups under charismatic or influential leaders. Notable figures, such as Brennus, who led the Senans during the sack of Rome in 390 BCE, exemplify the capacity of individual leaders to coordinate broad coalitions while maintaining allegiance to local tribal traditions. Interpretive analysis suggests that the effectiveness of these leaders relied on personal prestige, military competence, and the ability to negotiate between competing tribal interests. Assemblies played a central role in the governance of Gaulish tribes. Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico describes tribal councils convened to discuss matters of war, tribute, and alliances. These gatherings often included both noble elites and, in some cases, representatives of broader kinship groups, suggesting a participatory dimension in decision-making. Archaeological evidence of central meeting places within oppida, such as elevated platforms and designated public spaces, corroborates the accounts of organized political activity. Interpretive insights indicate that assemblies provided a mechanism for consensus building, balancing the authority of chieftains with collective tribal input. Tribal confederacies were frequently situational, arising in response to external threats or opportunities for coordinated expansion. Caesar's narratives describe how multiple tribes could unite under a single commander during campaigns, only to revert to independent governance once the immediate objective was achieved. Archaeological evidence of fortification networks and coordinated settlement patterns suggests that these temporary alliances were supported by pre-existing logistical and infrastructural frameworks. Interpretive analysis highlights that this flexibility allowed Gaulish society to combine the advantages of local knowledge and centralized coordination when required. The influence of notable leaders extended beyond military matters into economic and religious domains. Elite households often controlled trade routes, access to imported goods, and ceremonial authority, consolidating both material and symbolic power. Excavations of hoards containing Mediterranean imports, including Greek pottery and Etruscan bronzes, indicate that wealth was concentrated among chieftains, enhancing their capacity to negotiate alliances and secure loyalty. Druids and ritual officials reinforced these hierarchies by legitimizing leadership through ceremonial acts, oaths, and legal adjudication. This integration of political, economic, and religious authority provided a systemic foundation for governance within tribal confederacies. The balance between decentralized autonomy and confederate authority required careful negotiation. Rivalries over territory, resources, and prestige could disrupt alliances, necessitating diplomacy, ritualized mediation, and displays of military strength. Archaeological evidence of destruction layers, fortification enhancements, and weapon caches across multiple tribal territories supports the conclusion that intertribal competition was a constant factor. Interpretive insights suggest that the ability of leaders to maintain cohesion among competing groups was a critical determinant of both short-term military success and long-term political stability. Military organization was closely tied to governance. Leaders could summon warbands from constituent tribes, coordinating strategic objectives, supply logistics, and battlefield deployment. Caesar's accounts emphasize that success in these campaigns depended on both charismatic leadership and established social structures capable of mobilizing manpower efficiently. Archaeological findings of weapon deposits, fortified settlements, and standardized defensive constructions indicate that political organization provided the necessary framework for collective military action. This functional integration illustrates the systemic interdependence of governance and warfare in Gaulish society. In summary, the tribal confederacies and leadership structures of Gaul combined decentralized authority, charismatic leadership, assembly participation, and ritual legitimization to produce a resilient and adaptive political system. Individual chieftains could coordinate large-scale operations without undermining local autonomy. Assemblies allowed for participatory governance, and ritual frameworks reinforced both hierarchy and cohesion. Archaeological and textual evidence together demonstrate that Gaulish governance was flexible, contextually adaptive, and capable of sustaining both internal stability and external military engagement. These mechanisms established the organizational basis for the coordinated mobilization of troops, resource allocation, and strategic decision-making in subsequent conflicts with neighboring powers. Internal governance set the framework for military mobilization, linking political structures, ritual authority, and resource management to the operational capacity of Gaulish tribes during periods of warfare and expansion. In Gaul, law was as much a spiritual as a civic matter, reflecting the intertwined roles of governance, religion, and social cohesion. Archaeological and textual evidence indicates that the Gauls relied predominantly on oral legal traditions, transmitted through druids and respected elders. Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico describes the druids as both religious leaders and arbiters of justice, responsible for adjudicating disputes, interpreting customary laws, and maintaining moral and ritual order within the tribes. These oral legal frameworks were reinforced through ritualized oaths and ceremonial observances, demonstrating the symbolic authority that underpinned practical adjudication. Druids exercised a multifaceted role in dispute resolution. They mediated conflicts over land, inheritance, and property rights, ensuring that decisions were respected across both local and intertribal contexts. Archaeological evidence from ritual enclosures and sacred groves, such as the sites at Gournay-sur-Arronde and Brocéliande, suggests that adjudication often took place in spaces imbued with religious significance, reinforcing the binding authority of legal rulings. Interpretive analysis indicates that the integration of spiritual oversight with legal enforcement strengthened compliance, particularly in societies where written codification was absent. Penalties and sanctions within Gaulish law were primarily restorative or compensatory, rather than purely punitive. Compensation in the form of livestock, metalwork, or other valuable goods served both to redress harm and to maintain social equilibrium. Records from Roman observers note that fines, duels, or public restitution were employed to resolve conflicts without provoking cycles of vendetta. Archaeological finds, including hoards of deposited weapons and goods, may reflect ritualized expressions of restitution or the settlement of disputes through ceremonial offerings. These practices illustrate a system in which legal outcomes were embedded within broader social and spiritual networks, ensuring both resolution and reinforcement of communal norms. Comparative analysis with contemporary Roman law highlights both contrasts and functional similarities. While Roman legal codes were increasingly formalized and written, Gaulish law remained oral and ritualized. Both systems, however, emphasized the importance of public recognition of legal authority, whether through civic magistrates or druidic adjudicators. Interpretive insights suggest that Gaulish legal practice prioritized the maintenance of social cohesion and communal stability over strict codification, reflecting the decentralized yet interconnected nature of tribal governance. In both contexts, legal enforcement relied on societal acceptance of authority, though the Gaulish system depended more heavily on personal and ritual legitimacy. The role of law extended beyond dispute resolution to the regulation of intertribal relations and alliances. Druids were often involved in the negotiation and validation of treaties, oaths, and confederations, providing continuity and legitimacy to agreements between autonomous tribes. Archaeological evidence of ritual depositions associated with alliances, combined with textual records from Caesar, supports the conclusion that legal authority was integral to maintaining cohesion among politically independent groups. This dual function demonstrates the systemic interdependence of law, ritual, and governance in Gaulish society. Education and transmission of legal knowledge were centralized within the Druidic class. Initiates underwent extensive training in customary law, ritual practice, and social mediation, ensuring the continuity of legal authority across generations. Interpretive insights suggest that the exclusivity and rigor of Druidic education reinforced both social hierarchy and institutional stability, enabling a standardized approach to law despite the absence of written codes. This professionalization of legal expertise was critical for maintaining order and legitimacy within increasingly complex tribal structures. In summary, the Gaulish legal system was a complex network in which oral law, Druidic authority, ritual observance, and restorative practices combined to sustain social cohesion and governance. Customary law provided a mechanism for resolving disputes, regulating intertribal relations, and maintaining communal stability. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates that spiritual legitimacy was inseparable from legal authority, reinforcing compliance and institutional continuity. Comparative analysis with Roman practices highlights the adaptability and functionality of Gaulish law within decentralized tribal structures, showing that legal systems were integral to both political stability and societal resilience. Stable governance enabled the Gauls to project military power, linking legal authority, ritual legitimacy, and hierarchical coordination to the organization and effectiveness of tribal warbands in subsequent conflicts. Gaulish towns were more than villages. They were nodes of administration and commerce, serving as the organizational heart of tribal territories. The oppida, large fortified settlements emerging in the Latine period, functioned as centers of political authority, economic activity, and ceremonial life. Archaeological evidence from sites such as Bibracte, Moshing, and Ensurun demonstrates that these settlements were strategically located on elevated terrain or near key trade routes, enabling control over surrounding agricultural lands and riverine corridors. Excavated fortifications, including walls, ditches, and gates, indicate advanced engineering and a deliberate approach to defense, reflecting the dual priorities of security and administrative centrality. Urban planning within oppida suggests that Gaulish leaders were attentive to both functional and social considerations. Streets, Workshops and residential quarters were often organized in ways that facilitated trade, craft production, and communal interaction. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of metallurgical workshops, pottery kilns, and storage facilities within these settlements, demonstrating that oppida served as hubs of craft specialization and economic coordination. Interpretive insights indicate that centralized settlement enabled elites to manage resource distribution, monitor production, and consolidate both political and military authority within their territories. The population distribution within oppida was structured to support administrative efficiency and communal cohesion. Excavations revealed differentiation between elite residences, common dwellings, and areas dedicated to religious or ceremonial functions. High-status households were frequently situated in fortified or elevated sectors, reflecting both social hierarchy and security concerns. Common residential areas were organized to optimize access to marketplaces, craft centers, and public spaces. Interpretive analysis suggests that this spatial arrangement facilitated governance, reinforced social stratification, and allowed for efficient mobilization of labor and resources when necessary. Oppida also functioned as regional trade nodes, linking local production with intertribal and Mediterranean networks. Archaeological evidence of imported goods, including Greek pottery, Etruscan metalwork, and coins, demonstrates that trade was both extensive and integrated into settlement life. Market areas and storage facilities within oppida indicate that these settlements not only served as points of exchange, but also as centers for regulating economic activity. Interpretive insights highlight that economic connectivity reinforced political authority, as control over trade routes and goods allowed tribal leaders to maintain influence both within and beyond their territories. Fortifications were a defining feature of these centers of power, reflecting both practical and symbolic considerations. Walls, ditches, and ramparts were often constructed in multiple layers, providing layered defense against raids and military incursions. Archaeological evidence from Bibracte and Moshing indicates that fortifications were periodically reinforced, suggesting both strategic planning and the capacity for sustained labor organization. Interpretive analysis suggests that these defensive measures not only protected inhabitants but also served as a visible manifestation of authority, signaling the power and organizational capability of the ruling elite. Administrative functions extended beyond defense and trade to include judicial and ritual activities. Central spaces within oppida were used for assemblies, legal adjudication, and religious ceremonies, often overseen by druids or tribal leaders. Excavated earthworks, ceremonial deposits, and meeting platforms provide material evidence of these activities, illustrating how settlement design integrated multiple facets of societal governance. This multifunctionality underscores the systemic role of oppida as hubs where political, religious, and economic operations were coordinated, reflecting the complexity of Gaulish social organization. In summary, centers of power in Gaul, particularly oppida, combined defensive engineering, urban planning, and economic integration to create administrative and strategic hubs. Their placement along trade routes, careful organization of residential and production spaces, and incorporation of ceremonial and judicial functions demonstrate that settlement planning was both practical and socially symbolic. Archaeological evidence illustrates that these nodes supported not only local governance but also intertribal coordination, economic regulation, and military readiness. Interpretive insights suggest that oppida were essential to the consolidation of authority, enabling leaders to manage resources, oversee social order, and maintain influence across expansive territories. These structures facilitated religious, economic, and military coordination, linking spatial organization, political authority, and ritual practice to the broader operational capacity of Gaulish society in both peacetime and periods of conflict. Druids were both the conscience and the power brokers of Gaul, functioning as religious authorities, educators, and mediators within tribal society. Archaeological evidence, textual records, and comparative analysis indicate that Druids held multifaceted roles that extended beyond spiritual guidance into law, governance, and social cohesion. Sacred groves, ritual enclosures, and designated ceremonial sites served as focal points for their activities, providing both physical and symbolic centers for religious and civic engagement. Interpretive insights suggest that the institutional authority of druids reinforced the stability of tribal structures, linking spiritual legitimacy with political influence. Primary textual sources, most notably Julius Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico and Strabo's Geographica, describe druids as custodians of knowledge, responsible for overseeing legal proceedings, religious rites, and education. Caesar emphasizes their role in maintaining oral legal traditions, mediating disputes, and sanctioning alliances among tribes. Archaeological correlates, including ritual deposits in bogs and ceremonial sites such as Gournay-sur-Arronde and Brocéliande, indicate that these practices were materially grounded. Offerings of weapons, livestock, and crafted goods at sacred sites reinforce the dual function of druids as both spiritual intercessors and social regulators. This integration highlights the systemic influence of religious hierarchies within Gaulish society. Education was a central component of druidic authority. Initiates underwent extended periods of training, learning not only ritual practice and theological knowledge but also genealogies, legal codes, and oral histories. Caesar notes that this training could last up to 20 years, reflecting the complexity and institutional significance of druidic instruction. Archaeological evidence of communal spaces within oppida and ritual sites supports the existence of dedicated areas for learning and mentorship. Interpretive analysis suggests that druidic education ensured the transmission of legal, religious, and cultural knowledge, sustaining continuity across generations and reinforcing social cohesion within and between tribes. The hierarchical structure of druidism was linked to both spiritual and political influence. Druids advised chieftains, mediated intertribal disputes, and performed rituals that legitimized leadership. Archaeological findings of high-status burials with ceremonial items, including torques and ritual implements, indicate the social prestige associated with druidic roles. Interpretive insights highlight that the dual function of druids, as spiritual and political authorities, allowed them to influence decisions affecting governance, trade, and military mobilization. Their authority was recognized across multiple tribes, providing a unifying framework in a decentralized and often competitive landscape. Ritual practices under druidic supervision were varied and extensive. Sacred groves, often situated on elevated terrain or near rivers, served as sites for religious ceremonies, oaths, and community gatherings. Excavations of votive deposits, including weapons, jewelry, and animal remains, demonstrate the resource-intensive and ceremonial nature of these rites. Interpretive analysis suggests that ritual offerings reinforced social hierarchy, asserted elite status, and maintained relationships between spiritual and secular authorities. By codifying ceremonial practice, druids facilitated both communal identity and obedience to social norms, ensuring that spiritual authority was intertwined with governance. Religious authority intersected with economic and military spheres in practical ways. Druids oversaw rituals that legitimized the collection of tribute, the mobilization of warriors, and the establishment of trade and alliance agreements. Archaeological evidence from oppida, including centralized storage facilities and ceremonial deposits, supports the conclusion that economic and military activities were often coordinated in conjunction with ritual observance. Interpretive insights indicate that the capacity of druids to mediate, sanction, and oversee these activities provided a stabilizing influence, linking disparate tribal groups into functional networks capable of both cooperation and conflict. Comparative analysis with other contemporary societies highlights the unique integration of religious and political authority in Gaul. Unlike Rome, where civic and religious offices were formally codified and separated, Gaulish druids combined spiritual, legal, and educational functions, embedding authority within both symbolic and practical domains. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates that this structure facilitated negotiation, dispute resolution, and social cohesion across tribal confederacies, illustrating the systemic role of druidism in maintaining both order and flexibility within decentralized governance frameworks. In summary, Druidism in Gaul exemplified a complex hierarchical institution that transcended spiritual guidance, encompassing legal authority, education, and political mediation. Archaeological findings, including sacred sites, votive deposits, and ceremonial implements, corroborate textual accounts of their societal role. Interpretive insights highlight that Druidic influence extended across multiple spheres: religion, governance, law, and military coordination, serving as a central mechanism for maintaining cohesion in a decentralized tribal landscape. Their authority was both recognized and reinforced across generations, shaping the cultural and political identity of Gaulish society. Religious authority intersected with economic and military spheres, demonstrating that Druidic influence extended beyond ritual guidance to the coordination of resources, alliances, and strategic action, preparing Gaulish society for both internal organization and external conflict. Art conveyed identity, status, and belief across Gaulish society, serving as both functional objects and symbolic markers of social and spiritual order. Archaeological evidence indicates that metalwork, pottery, jewelry, and carvings were integral to everyday life and ceremonial contexts. Torques, fibulae, and elaborately decorated weapons, often found in burial sites, functioned as indicators of social status, tribal affiliation, and ritual participation. The Latin artistic style, characterized by intricate curvilinear patterns and stylized representations of animals, provides insight into shared aesthetic conventions and symbolic systems across geographically diverse tribes. Interpretive analysis suggests that such artifacts reinforced social hierarchies while simultaneously communicating collective identity. Material culture reflected both spiritual and practical dimensions. Ceramics and household items reveal urban-rural distinctions. Apota housed standardized pottery production, storage facilities, and specialized workshops, whereas rural settlements produced more utilitarian forms adapted to local needs. Archaeological surveys of sites such as Bibracte, Moshing, and Ensuren demonstrate regional variations in style and function, indicating the interplay between central authority and local practice. Interpretive insights indicate that this differentiation allowed elite centers to assert cultural influence while maintaining flexibility and adaptability in peripheral communities. Iconography served as a conduit for spiritual and social values. Carvings on weapons, jewelry, and ritual objects often depicted animals, mythological motifs, and abstract patterns associated with Gaulish cosmology. Deposits at sites such as Glauberg and Mont-Lassois contain ceremonial items with consistent motifs across multiple tribes, suggesting shared symbolic frameworks that transcended local identities. Interpretive analysis highlights that these symbols facilitated both religious practice and social cohesion, functioning as a visual language for ritual participation, elite authority, and communal belonging. Daily life and material culture were closely linked to economic activity. Artifacts from workshops and marketplaces within Apota indicate the systematic production of both functional and prestige goods. Metalworking, pottery, textile production, and woodworking were often organized under elite supervision, reflecting the integration of craft specialization with social and political structures. Archaeological evidence of imported Mediterranean items, Greek pottery, Etruscan bronzes, and coins demonstrates the active participation of Gaulish communities in interregional trade. Interpretive insights suggest that artistic production not only reflected social hierarchy but also supported economic integration and cross-cultural exchange. Ritual and ceremonial use of material culture further reinforced social hierarchies. High-status items, including torques, ornate weapons, and decorative fibulae, were often deposited in sacred sites, bogs, or burial contexts. Archaeological excavations reveal deliberate placement patterns, indicating that such offerings served both religious and social purposes. Interpretive analysis suggests that these practices legitimized elite authority, reinforced communal values, and maintained spiritual and social continuity. By embedding art within ritual practice, material culture became a medium for both symbolic communication and structural cohesion. Spatial organization and lifestyle differences further illustrate the relationship between art, status, and daily life. Urban centers, with planned streets, workshops, and marketplaces, concentrated elite activities, specialized crafts, and ceremonial functions. In contrast, Rural settlements were more dispersed, with multifunctional domestic spaces and locally adapted production. Interpretive insights indicate that this urban-rural contrast facilitated the dissemination of cultural norms and reinforced networks of authority, allowing central hubs to influence peripheral communities through both material culture and ritual observance. Material culture also provides evidence of technological proficiency. The manufacture of metal torques, weapons, and jewelry required advanced techniques, including casting, alloying, and intricate engraving. Pottery production employed standardized forms, firing methods, and surface treatments, demonstrating systematic organization and specialized knowledge. Archaeological evidence of tools, molds, and workshop layouts supports the conclusion that craftsmanship was both highly skilled and socially regulated. Interpretive analysis highlights that technical proficiency in material culture reinforced elite prestige, economic control, and the symbolic power of objects. In summary, Gaulish art and material culture were deeply intertwined with social hierarchy, religious practice, and daily life. Torques, jewelry, pottery, and carvings functioned as indicators of status, spiritual affiliation, and collective identity, while workshops, markets, and settlement organization facilitated both production and distribution. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates that artistic and material practices reinforced social cohesion, economic integration, and ritual observance. Interpretive insights indicate that understanding Gaulish society requires a comprehensive view of material culture as both a practical and symbolic system, reflecting the interplay of social, political, and spiritual dimensions. Cultural cohesion reinforced trade networks and economic integration, linking material production, symbolic communication, and social hierarchy to the broader organization of Gaulish society and the operational capacity of tribal confederacies. Rituals structured the Gauls' lives from birth to death, providing continuity, cohesion, and a framework for social and political integration. Archaeological evidence, combined with textual sources such as Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico and Strabo's Geographica, indicates that seasonal festivals, life cycle ceremonies, and communal gatherings played a central role in maintaining tribal unity. Ceremonial sites, including hilltop enclosures, sacred groves, and opata central plazas, reveal the material dimensions of these practices, illustrating how ritual observance was embedded within the spatial and social organization of Gaulish communities. Seasonal festivals marked key agricultural cycles, including planting, harvest, and solstices, linking ritual observance to environmental and economic rhythms. Excavated deposits of food, pottery, and crafted goods at sites such as Gournay-sur-Arronde and Mont-la-Soise suggest that communal feasting was a core component of these celebrations. Interpretive analysis indicates that such events reinforced cooperation among kinship groups and tribes, ensuring the equitable distribution of resources, the reaffirmation of social obligations, and the consolidation of leadership legitimacy through ceremonial oversight. Life cycle ceremonies, including birth, coming of age, marriage, and funerary rites, further structured communal life. Burial practices, evidenced by richly furnished graves and hoards of personal and ceremonial objects, provide insight into social stratification and ritual priorities. Torques, weapons, and ornamental items frequently accompanied the deceased, signaling both status and adherence to spiritual norms. Interpretive insights suggest that these rites reinforced tribal identity, delineated social roles, and maintained intergenerational continuity within communities dispersed across a geographically extensive region. Sacrificial rituals were integral to religious observance and social cohesion. Archaeological finds, including animal remains in bogs, lakes, and ceremonial enclosures, indicate that both domesticated and wild species were offered to deities or ancestral spirits. Caesar's accounts corroborate these practices, noting that ritual sacrifices were sometimes accompanied by public feasts or games. Interpretive analysis highlights that these acts served multiple functions: religious devotion, affirmation of elite authority, and reinforcement of communal solidarity. Sacrifice and ceremony acted as both symbolic communication and social regulation, binding individuals to collective norms. Games, competitions, and public displays were commonly associated with festivals. Evidence from Opata and ritual sites suggests that athletic contests, mock combats, and equestrian demonstrations were staged alongside feasts and sacrifices. Interpretive insights indicate that these activities were not merely recreational. They served to train warriors, display elite prowess, and reinforce hierarchical structures. By integrating performance with ritual observance, Gaulish festivals simultaneously educated, entertained, and consolidated tribal cohesion. Intertribal gatherings facilitated negotiation, alliance formation, and conflict resolution. Archaeological evidence of large-scale deposits and centralized meeting areas supports textual accounts of Confederate assemblies coinciding with religious observances. Druids and ritual officials often mediated these gatherings, lending spiritual authority to agreements and ensuring compliance with customary law. Interpretive analysis suggests that the coordination of political and ceremonial functions during festivals reinforced trust, enabled communication across distances, and maintained cohesion in a society marked by decentralized tribal structures. Ritual practices also reinforced the relationship between material culture and social organization. Deposits of crafted items, including torques, fibulae, and ceremonial weapons, demonstrate that objects were both symbols of status and instruments of communal engagement. Interpretive insights indicate that the circulation of these items during festivals reinforced social hierarchies, transmitted cultural knowledge, and strengthened networks of loyalty and obligation among participants. Material culture and ritual were thus mutually reinforcing mechanisms that sustained both symbolic and practical aspects of governance. In summary, festivals, rituals, and social practices were central to Gaulish society, structuring daily life, reinforcing tribal loyalty, and linking spiritual authority with social, political, and economic systems. Seasonal and life cycle ceremonies integrated community participation, elite oversight, and ritualized action, while sacrificial and competitive activities reinforced cohesion and hierarchical structures. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates that these practices provided systemic mechanisms for maintaining unity across diverse and geographically dispersed tribes. Interpretive analysis highlights that ritual observance was a critical tool for social integration, sustaining intertribal networks and embedding collective norms into everyday life. Cultural systems influenced the organization of the economy and trade, as ritual coordination, seasonal planning, and communal oversight shaped patterns of production, exchange, and resource distribution across Gaulish society. The wealth of Gaul was rooted in its fertile fields and sophisticated farming, forming the economic backbone of tribal society. Archaeological and environmental evidence indicates that Gaulish communities employed a variety of agricultural techniques adapted to regional conditions. Pollen analyses, soil studies, and settlement excavations reveal extensive cultivation of cereals, including wheat, barley, and oats, alongside legumes and flax for both food and textile production. These findings demonstrate that farming was systematic, diversified, and integrated with local ecological conditions, enabling the sustenance of dense populations within both Opata and rural settlements. Crop rotation and field management were central to maintaining soil fertility and productivity. Archaeobotanical data indicate the use of multi-year planting cycles, fallow periods, and intercropping strategies, reflecting advanced agronomic knowledge. Settlement surveys, particularly at Opata such as Bibracht and Moshing, reveal the spatial organization of arable lands surrounding central hubs, facilitating both local consumption and surplus accumulation. Interpretive analysis suggests that these practices provided resilience against environmental fluctuation, supporting stable food supplies critical for social cohesion, urban growth, and military mobilization. Animal husbandry complemented crop cultivation, providing meat, dairy, labor, and secondary products such as hides and wool. Archaeozoological evidence from sites across Gaul demonstrates the breeding of cattle, sheep, pigs, and horses, with regional specialization observed in both livestock type and husbandry methods. Horses, in particular, played a dual role in agricultural labor and military mobilization, linking economic activity to broader social and political functions. Interpretive insights indicate that the integration of crop and livestock production maximized resource efficiency, reinforcing the economic foundation necessary for population growth and elite consolidation. Irrigation and water management were implemented where environmental conditions demanded. Archaeological surveys reveal channels, terraces, and drainage features designed to control water flow, enhance arable productivity, and protect settlements from seasonal flooding. Such infrastructure demonstrates not only technical ingenuity but also coordinated labor organization, suggesting that large-scale agricultural planning was possible under tribal leadership. Interpretive analysis highlights that control over water resources conferred both economic and political leverage, enabling elites to stabilize food production and manage surplus distribution. Evidence from storage facilities and granaries indicates that surplus production was systematically collected, managed, and redistributed. Excavations within Apata reveal pits, silos, and enclosed storage structures capable of preserving grain and other agricultural products across seasons. Interpretive insights suggest that these mechanisms allowed tribal authorities to regulate consumption, support urban populations, supply warriors during campaigns, and participate in intertribal trade. Surplus accumulation thus functioned as a critical link between agricultural productivity and broader economic and military capacity. Agriculture in Gaul was further connected to technological innovation. Tools such as iron plows, sickles, and spades, recovered from both rural and urban contexts, demonstrate the application of metallurgy to optimize farming efficiency. Archaeological evidence also indicates the use of draft animals, harness systems, and wheeled transport for both cultivation and distribution. Interpretive analysis highlights that these technological applications amplified productivity, enabling communities to sustain larger populations, mobilize resources rapidly, and support complex social and political structures. The spatial integration of agriculture with settlements and trade routes facilitated economic connectivity. Fields surrounding Apata were often located near rivers, roads, or secondary settlements, enabling efficient movement of goods both within and beyond tribal territories. Archaeological surveys of roads, bridges, and trade nodes indicate that agricultural surplus was a critical commodity in intertribal exchange, connecting Gaul to broader European networks, including Mediterranean markets. Interpretive insights suggest that the production, storage, and transport of agricultural goods were systematically organized, forming a backbone for economic specialization and regional influence. In summary, Gaulish agriculture was a sophisticated system integrating crop cultivation, livestock management, irrigation, and technological innovation. Archaeological and environmental evidence demonstrates that these practices supported population growth, urban development, and the accumulation of surplus necessary for trade and military readiness. Interpretive analysis highlights that control over productive resources reinforced political authority, facilitated intertribal cohesion, and enabled participation in wider European economic networks. Agriculture thus served as the foundational pillar underpinning both social stability and strategic capability in Gaulish society. Surplus production fueled trade networks connecting Gaul with wider Europe, linking agricultural output to craft specialization, commercial exchange, and economic integration across the tribal landscape. Gaul was a hub of commerce, linking northern Europe with the Mediterranean world. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates that Gaulish communities actively participated in extensive trade networks that connected local production to distant economies, including those of the Etruscans, Greeks, and Romans. Imported goods, such as Greek ceramics, Etruscan bronzes, and wine amphorae, have been discovered across Apata and rural settlements, illustrating the breadth and consistency of these commercial interactions. Interpretive insights indicate that access to imported materials not only satisfied elite demand for luxury items, but also reinforced social hierarchies and political legitimacy. Trade was facilitated by both riverine and overland routes, connecting production centers, urban hubs, and external markets. Archaeological surveys of the Seine, Rhône, and Loire valleys, alongside remnants of roads and trackways, indicate systematic transport networks supporting the movement of goods. These routes enabled the export of surplus agricultural products, textiles, and crafted items to Mediterranean centers while importing metals, wine, and luxury objects. Interpretive analysis highlights that the integration of local production with long-distance trade enhanced both economic prosperity and political influence, allowing tribal leaders to consolidate authority through control of exchange networks. Metals were a central component of Gaulish trade, both as raw material and as finished products. Iron, tin, copper, and gold were mined locally, processed in workshops, and distributed regionally or exported. Excavations at sites such as Mont Bouvray and the Massif Central demonstrate evidence of smelting, casting, and smithing activities, while imported silver and gold artifacts reveal external demand for Gaulish craftsmanship. Interpretive insights suggest that metalworking not only satisfied domestic and ceremonial requirements but also created commodities that strengthened economic ties with Mediterranean powers, reinforcing Gauls' integration into broader trading systems. Wine and other consumables formed a significant portion of imports, reflecting both economic and cultural exchange. Amphorae from Massalia, modern Marseille, and Etruscan centers have been recovered in Opata, indicating both elite consumption and distribution within local networks. Interpretive analysis suggests that imported goods such as wine and olive oil serve dual purposes: practical use and symbolic display, signaling wealth, status, and cultural connectivity. These imports also stimulated local production of storage facilities, transport systems, and artisan crafts, further embedding trade into social and economic life. The development of coinage further facilitated commerce and economic integration. Celtic coinage, influenced by Greek and Roman models, provided standardized mediums of exchange, enabling more complex trade and credit arrangements. Archaeological evidence, including hoards of coins and minting tools, indicates that certain tribal centers controlled monetary production, regulating trade and consolidating political power. Interpretive insights suggest that coinage not only supported local and intertribal commerce but also symbolized authority, linking economic control to social and political legitimacy. Intermediary merchants and itinerant traders played a crucial role in connecting distant regions. Textual accounts and archaeological finds indicate that these networks were organized through both formal and informal arrangements, facilitating the flow of goods across linguistic, cultural, and political boundaries. Amphorae stamps, pottery styles, and trade markers allow modern researchers to reconstruct patterns of exchange, revealing a sophisticated economic infrastructure. Interpretive analysis highlights that the ability to maintain reliable trade connections enhanced tribal resilience, provided access to strategic materials, and underpinned diplomatic and military negotiations. Trade networks were not only economically significant but also politically strategic. Control over key nodes, river crossings, and coastal ports allowed tribal elites to regulate access, levy tolls, and negotiate alliances with Mediterranean powers. Archaeological evidence of fortified trade centers and warehouses supports the conclusion that commerce was closely tied to political authority. Interpretive insights suggest that these economic capabilities enabled tribes to mobilize resources for defense, facilitate large-scale projects, and sustain both urban and rural populations, reinforcing systemic interdependence between commerce and governance. In summary, Gaulish trade networks connected northern Europe to the Mediterranean, integrating local production with imported goods, metals, wine, and luxury items. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates the sophistication of transport, distribution, and economic regulation, while coinage and artisan production facilitated standardized exchange. Interpretive analysis highlights that trade reinforced political authority, supported social hierarchies, and enabled strategic military and diplomatic activity. The integration of economic and cultural exchange underpinned both the prosperity and the resilience of Gaulish society, linking material wealth to political and technological development. Economic strength supported technological innovation and military campaigns, linking surplus production, artisanal specialization, and long-distance trade to the operational capacity and strategic flexibility of Gaulish tribes. Gaulish metalwork combined utility with artistic sophistication, reflecting the integration of technology, social hierarchy, and economic specialization. Archaeological evidence from Latin period settlements, including oppida and workshops, demonstrates the advanced production of iron and bronze tools, weapons, and ceremonial objects. Excavations at sites such as Bibracht, Moshing, and Mont Bouvray reveal smelting furnaces, molds, anvils, and slag deposits, indicating systematic metallurgical activity. Interpretive analysis suggests that these workshops function both to supply local communities and to produce goods for intertribal trade and ceremonial exchange. Iron production underpinned agricultural efficiency, craft specialization, and military capability. Smelting techniques involved controlled combustion of iron ore with charcoal, producing malleable metal suitable for plowshares, knives, and weaponry. Archaeometallurgical studies of iron artifacts show consistent chemical composition, indicating standardized production methods and skilled craftsmanship. Interpretive insights suggest that control over iron production was a critical factor in sustaining both daily life and military readiness, allowing tribal leaders to equip warriors and support population growth. Bronze, used for both tools and decorative items, illustrates the dual focus on functionality and status. Artifacts such as fibulae, torques, and ceremonial weapons reveal intricate designs consistent with Latin stylistic conventions. Metallurgical analyses indicate alloying techniques that enhance durability and aesthetic quality. Interpretive insights highlight that bronze items were both practical and symbolic, serving as markers of social status, ritual participation, and political authority. The production and distribution of these objects reinforced elite legitimacy and interconnected craft and ceremonial economies. Weapon manufacturing exemplified the integration of technological innovation with social and military needs. Swords, spears, shields, and armor were produced with both functionality and craftsmanship in mind, often incorporating decorative motifs that reflected tribal identity. Archaeological evidence shows that weapons were stored in workshops, fortifications, and ritual deposits, demonstrating both practical use and symbolic significance. Interpretive analysis suggests that metalworking capacity enabled rapid mobilization, standardized equipment, and strategic advantage in conflicts, linking material culture directly to military organization. Workshops were often centralized within oppida, facilitating supervision, resource allocation, and knowledge transfer. Spatial analysis of settlement layouts indicates designated zones for smelting, forging, and finishing, allowing for efficient production workflows. Tools, molds, and waste material recovered from these zones provide insight into the scale and complexity of production. Interpretive insights suggest that these specialized centers allowed for both economic surplus and technological innovation, reinforcing social hierarchies by concentrating control over skilled labor and critical resources. Trade in metal goods extended beyond local consumption, connecting Gaulish communities to wider European networks. Archaeological evidence of exported swords, fibulae, and tools, alongside imported raw materials such as tin and copper, demonstrates integration with Mediterranean and Atlantic trade systems. Interpretive analysis indicates that the production of high-quality metalwork enhanced economic influence, reinforced alliances, and served as a mechanism for cultural exchange, linking technological capability with both commerce and diplomacy. Metallurgy also intersected with ritual and social practice. Weapons and tools were frequently deposited in sacred sites, lakes, and bogs, reflecting ceremonial observance and reinforcing elite authority. Interpretive insights suggest that these deposits served dual purposes: ritual appeasement and public demonstration of wealth, craftsmanship, and technological mastery. By embedding material innovation within religious and social frameworks, Gaulish societies strengthened the legitimacy of both elites and artisans. In summary, Gaulish metallurgy and craftsmanship combined functional utility with aesthetic sophistication, supporting agricultural efficiency, military readiness, and social stratification. Archaeological evidence demonstrates systematic production of iron and bronze, specialized workshops, and integration with trade networks, while interpretive analysis highlights the broader implications for political authority, economic influence, and ceremonial practice. The technological capabilities of Gaulish artisans provided the structural foundation for economic resilience, strategic military organization, and cultural cohesion, underscoring the systemic role of craftsmanship in societal development. Material innovation became a critical factor in expansion and warfare, linking metallurgical expertise to strategic capacity, resource mobilization, and the broader trajectory of Gaulish territorial influence. The Gauls were masters of flexible warfare, using terrain as their ally. Archaeological evidence, combined with Roman textual sources such as Julius Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico, provides a detailed understanding of Gaulish military organization, tactics, and strategic innovation. Warbands were typically composed of male warriors drawn from tribal kinship groups, structured under chieftains or elected leaders who could rapidly mobilize forces in response to both internal disputes and external threats. These units were decentralized yet capable of coordinated action, demonstrating adaptability and strategic awareness. Infantry formed the backbone of Gaulish forces. Equipped with spears, swords, and shields, warriors were trained to execute ambushes, flanking maneuvers, and hit-and-run tactics suited to forested and hilly terrain. Archaeological evidence, including weapon deposits and fortified hilltop settlements, indicates that defensive and offensive capabilities were closely integrated, allowing tribes to exploit natural features for tactical advantage. Interpretive analysis suggests that Gaulish warfare emphasized mobility, rapid deployment, and surprise over rigid formations, reflecting a systemic adaptation to both geography and social structure. Chariots played a specialized role in Gaulish military strategy, primarily for reconnaissance, rapid troop movement, and shock tactics. Finds of chariot components in burial contexts, including wheels, axles, and horse fittings, demonstrate their use among elite warriors and ceremonial leaders. Roman observers noted the psychological impact of chariots in battle, often accompanying infantry charges to disrupt enemy lines. Interpretive insights highlight that chariot use, while limited in scale, represented a technological and tactical innovation that amplified mobility and battlefield flexibility. Raiding and territorial skirmishes were central to Gaulish military activity. Evidence from both settlement excavations and Roman accounts suggests that tribes engaged in seasonal raids to secure resources, assert dominance, and challenge rival groups. Ambush tactics utilized knowledge of local terrain, including forests, rivers, and hillocks, allowing relatively small warbands to achieve disproportionate effect against larger or less mobile forces. Interpretive analysis suggests that this approach not only reinforced social cohesion within warbands but also established reputational authority, critical for both intertribal negotiation and deterrence. Coordination between multiple tribes during larger campaigns required temporary confederations and strategic alliances. Caesar's accounts of the Helvetii migration and Gallic uprisings demonstrate the capacity for complex operational planning, with combined forces mobilized under mutually recognized leaders. Archaeological evidence, including battlefield finds at Gergovia and Alesia, corroborates the presence of structured encampments, fortifications, and logistical organization. Interpretive insights indicate that the ability to coordinate dispersed tribal units reflected both social and military sophistication, linking political negotiation with operational effectiveness. Training and socialization were essential components of martial readiness. Young males underwent initiation into warbands, learning both weapon proficiency and strategic principles, often under the guidance of veteran warriors or chieftains. Burial sites with weapons and ritual deposits suggest that martial skill was intertwined with ceremonial recognition and status affirmation. Interpretive analysis highlights that this integration of social and military training reinforced tribal cohesion, ensuring continuity of martial knowledge across generations. Defensive strategies were closely connected to settlement patterns. Hillforts, apota, and fortified villages provided staging grounds for military organization, supply storage, and coordination of raids or defensive actions. Excavated ramparts, ditches, and palisades demonstrate systematic construction aimed at protecting populations while allowing for rapid sortie operations. Interpretive insights suggest that settlement-based defense facilitated both local security and regional strategic planning, linking territorial control with military capacity. Weaponry and armor reflect both practical and symbolic dimensions of Gaulish warfare. Swords, spears, shields, and helmets were manufactured with attention to durability and performance, while decoration and iconography reinforced social status and tribal identity. Archaeometallurgical studies indicate consistent alloying practices and advanced forging techniques, demonstrating technical expertise. Interpretive analysis highlights that martial technology was closely connected to both elite prestige and operational efficiency, integrating craftsmanship with tactical application. In summary, Gaulish warfare combined decentralized tribal organization, mobile infantry, chariot units, and tactical ingenuity to exploit terrain and achieve strategic objectives. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates systematic approaches to training, armament, logistics, and intertribal coordination. Interpretive insights indicate that the flexibility, adaptability, and integration of military, social, and political systems allowed Gaulish tribes to project power regionally, conduct effective raids, and respond to both internal and external challenges. This military foundation enabled subsequent territorial expansion, strategic alliances, and engagement with Mediterranean powers. Military strength enabled territorial expansion and external raids, linking tactical proficiency, logistical coordination, and leadership structures to the broader pattern of Gallic influence and mobility across Europe. Gaulish warriors crossed the Alps, leaving a lasting mark on Italian history. During the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE, several Gallic tribes undertook military campaigns into the Po Valley and surrounding Alpine regions, seeking new lands, resources, and opportunities for trade and settlement. Archaeological and textual sources, including Livy's of Urbe Condita and Polybius histories, document incursions by tribes such as the Senons, Boii, and Insubres, illustrating the complex interplay of migration, raiding, and strategic territorial acquisition. The most renowned episode of Gallic expansion is the sack of Rome in 390 BCE or 387 BCE, according to differing chronologies. Livy describes the advance of the Senons under the leadership of Brennus, highlighting both the tactical ingenuity of the Gauls and the unpreparedness of the Roman defenders. Archaeological evidence from sites surrounding Rome, including destruction layers and fortification reinforcements in subsequent decades, corroborates the historical narrative, demonstrating the tangible impact of Gallic incursions on urban and regional structures. Interpretive analysis suggests that this campaign exemplified the capacity of Gallic forces to combine mobility, shock tactics, and strategic audacity to project power across challenging terrain. Expansion into the Alps involved both military skill and logistical adaptation. Archaeological surveys indicate temporary camps, fortified passes, and supply deposits along alpine routes, reflecting systematic planning to sustain forces during high-altitude movements. Interpretive insights suggest that these campaigns required coordination between multiple tribes, leveraging knowledge of local topography, seasonal weather, and resource availability. The capacity to traverse mountainous terrain and establish temporary bases enabled sustained operations in regions previously considered difficult to access, demonstrating the operational sophistication of Gallic warbands. The migration and settlement patterns accompanying these expansions had enduring effects on northern Italian polities. Tribes such as the Boii and Insubres established footholds in the Po Valley, integrating into local trade networks and interacting with Etruscan and early Roman communities. Archaeological evidence of oppida, burial practices, and material culture in sites such as Bologna and Milan reflects a blending of Gallic and local traditions, indicating both the physical presence of migrant populations and their influence on regional social structures. Interpretive analysis highlights that expansion served not only martial objectives but also demographic and economic purposes, reinforcing tribal resilience and influence beyond Gaul. Raiding and plundering were integral to these campaigns. Livy records widespread appropriation of wealth, including livestock, precious metals, and crafted goods, while archaeological deposits of Gallic weapons and imported Roman artifacts suggest the material consequences of conflict. Interpretive insights indicate that such raids reinforced the reputation and authority of chieftains, provided resources for sustaining extended campaigns, and established precedents for diplomatic negotiation with local and external powers, including Rome. Conflict with Rome during this period created enduring military and political consequences. The sack of Rome prompted the construction of new defensive fortifications, increased militarization, and the establishment of structured responses to northern incursions. Archaeological layers in Rome and the surrounding Latium region document reconstruction efforts and adjustments to urban planning, reflecting the tangible influence of Gallic campaigns. Interpretive analysis suggests that these interactions catalyzed long-term military evolution on both sides, with Gaulish tactics influencing Roman strategic development and vice versa. Expansion into the Alps and northern Italy also facilitated interaction with Mediterranean trade networks. Gaulish forces moving through Etruscan and Pavali territories gained exposure to imported goods, coinage, and technological innovations, which were subsequently integrated into tribal economies and craft practices. Archaeological evidence of imported ceramics, metalwork, and currency in Alpine and northern Italian sites illustrates the flow of material culture alongside military activity. Interpretive insights suggest that these interactions reinforce the dual role of military campaigns as instruments of territorial expansion and conduits for economic and cultural exchange. In summary, Gallic expansion into northern Italy and the Alps during the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE exemplified a combination of military acumen, logistical planning, and socio-economic integration. Archaeological evidence and textual sources confirm both the immediate impact of campaigns, such as the sack of Rome, and the long-term settlement and cultural influence in the Pavali. Interpretive analysis highlights that these expansions prepared the Gauls for sustained interaction and eventual conflict with Rome, establishing both a reputation for martial prowess and a foundation for demographic and economic presence beyond the Alps. Expansion brought Gauls into sustained conflict with Rome, linking territorial ambition, military capability, and cross-cultural engagement to the broader trajectory of Gallic political and martial development. Gaulish settlements were as much fortresses as communities. Archaeological evidence indicates that oppida and hillforts functioned simultaneously as residential, economic, and military centers, reflecting the strategic sophistication of Gallic society. Hilltop locations were carefully chosen for visibility, defensibility, and control over surrounding territories. Excavations at sites such as Bibract, Moshing, and Mont Bouvray reveal concentric ramparts, ditches, and palisades constructed with advanced engineering techniques, demonstrating systematic approaches to defense and resource allocation. The construction of hill forts integrated natural terrain with man-made fortifications. Ramparts were often supplemented with timber or stone walls, reinforced gateways, and terraces to slow or channel attacking forces. Archaeological analysis of post holes, stone foundations, and earthworks indicates precise planning, coordinated labor, and long-term investment in infrastructure. Interpretive insights suggest that these fortifications served multiple purposes, providing security, asserting political control, and symbolizing the power of tribal elites to both their own communities and rival groups. Oppida also functioned as military coordination hubs. Centralized spaces within settlements allowed leaders to assemble troops, organize logistics, and plan campaigns. Archaeological evidence of storage pits, weapons deposits, and workshop zones supports the interpretation that these sites were capable of sustaining both population and military operations over extended periods. Interpretive analysis indicates that the integration of administrative and military functions enhanced the effectiveness of warbands and facilitated rapid mobilization in response to threats or expansion opportunities. Defensive strategies extended beyond individual settlements to intertribal coordination. Temporary alliances often relied on synchronized fortification use, where strategically located hill forts served as relay points, supply depots, and staging areas for combined forces. Archaeological surveys, combined with textual sources such as Caesar's Commentariae de Bello Gallico, reveal that coordinated fortification networks allowed tribes to monitor movement, secure resources, and prepare for collective military action. Interpretive insights suggest that these strategies exemplified early forms of regional defense planning, reinforcing both territorial control and political cohesion. The layout of oppida reflected both practical and symbolic considerations. Central plazas and communal spaces facilitated leadership, assemblies, and ritual observances, while peripheral ramparts and gates prioritized defense. Material culture recovered from fortifications, tools, weapons, and domestic artifacts, illustrates the integration of daily life with military preparedness. Interpretive analysis indicates that the embedding of defense into settlement organization reinforced social hierarchies, as elites directed labor, managed resources, and oversaw strategic planning. Resource management was a critical aspect of defensive capability. Granaries, water storage, and controlled access points allowed settlements to withstand sieges and support prolonged military campaigns. Archaeological evidence from multiple oppida demonstrates careful planning of storage infrastructure, often aligned with defensive features. Interpretive insights suggest that this logistical integration enhanced strategic resilience, linking economic planning with military capability and providing a foundation for coordinated responses to external threats. Fortifications also served a psychological function. Prominent ramparts, imposing gateways, and well-maintained walls projected strength to both allies and rivals, deterring potential attacks while reinforcing internal cohesion. Interpretive analysis highlights that defensive architecture acted as a tangible expression of political authority, signaling the capacity of tribal elites to organize, protect, and lead their communities effectively. In summary, Gaulish fortifications and defensive strategies exemplified the integration of settlement planning, military engineering, and intertribal coordination. Archaeological evidence demonstrates the sophistication of hill fort construction, the multifunctional use of oppida, and the strategic coordination among allied tribes. Interpretive insights indicate that these practices enhanced both defensive resilience and offensive capability, preparing Gallic communities for sustained territorial expansion and conflict with emerging powers. Fortifications thus functioned as both practical and symbolic instruments of security, political authority, and military organization. These strategies set the stage for confrontation with the Roman Republic, linking territorial fortification, tribal coordination, and military readiness to the broader trajectory of Gallic resistance and engagement in the Mediterranean sphere. Rome's northern frontier became a proving ground for Gaulish resistance. The earliest documented interactions between Roman forces and Gaulish tribes, beginning in the 4th century BCE, included skirmishes, defensive engagements, and diplomatic missions along the Po Valley and southern Gaul. Livy's of Urb Condita and Polybius' histories describe initial Roman awareness of the military capabilities and mobility of the Gauls, highlighting encounters that foreshadowed more sustained conflict. Archaeological evidence, including fortification remnants, weapon deposits, and destruction layers in northern Italian settlements, corroborates the textual record, demonstrating both the scope and intensity of these early confrontations. Initial engagements were often localized and reactive. Roman forces sought to defend colonies, secure trade routes, and maintain political influence in Transalpine regions, while Gaulish warbands employed ambushes, raids, and rapid withdrawal tactics. Archaeological finds, including mass weapon deposits at sites such as Clastidium and Mutina, suggest that these skirmishes were not isolated incidents but part of a broader pattern of cross-cultural military pressure. Interpretive analysis indicates that the Gauls' familiarity with local terrain, flexible command structures, and coordinated tribal alliances allowed them to challenge Roman operations effectively, despite differences in military organization and resources. Diplomatic contacts complemented military activity. Roman envoys engaged with tribal leaders to negotiate treaties, tributes, or temporary non-aggression pacts. Caesar's later commentary in Commentarii de Bello Gallico references the persistence of such negotiations, noting that alliances could be formed and dissolved rapidly in response to shifting political or strategic circumstances. Interpretive insights suggest that early diplomacy reflected the recognition by both sides of mutual interests, the practical limitations of extended campaigns, and the complex web of intertribal relations influencing decision-making in Gaul. The Gauls demonstrated tactical adaptability in response to Roman military methods. Infantry formations, guerrilla-style ambushes, and rapid cavalry maneuvers allowed smaller warbands to inflict significant operational disruption on Roman columns. Archaeological evidence of battlefield topography, temporary encampments, and defensive works aligns with textual accounts, revealing coordinated responses designed to exploit Roman logistical vulnerabilities. Interpretive analysis suggests that these engagements provided both practical experience and strategic lessons, enabling Gaulish forces to refine organizational, reconnaissance, and defensive techniques in preparation for larger-scale conflicts. Economic and logistical factors also shaped early encounters. Roman forces relied on secure supply lines and established colonies, while Gaulish warbands leveraged local resources and seasonal mobility. Archaeobotanical and zooarchaeological evidence indicates the movement and provisioning of troops, including the capture or requisition of grain, livestock, and materials from contested regions. Interpretive insights highlight that the capacity to sustain forces over distance was critical for both offensive and defensive operations, influencing the timing, duration, and intensity of engagements. Early Roman encounters underscored the strategic significance of key settlements and trade corridors. Opida, hillforts, and river crossings frequently became focal points for conflict, controlling access to resources and communication routes. Archaeological survey data demonstrates repeated occupation, fortification enhancement, and evidence of temporary military encampments near strategic locations. Interpretive analysis suggests that control of these nodes provided both military advantage and political leverage, enabling tribes to negotiate favorable terms, coordinate allied forces, or stage offensive operations against Roman positions. The cumulative effect of these early encounters heightened mutual awareness and respect. Roman commanders recognized the military skill, organizational capacity, and resilience of Gallic tribes, while the Gauls became increasingly familiar with Roman logistical methods, tactical formations, and strategic planning. Interpretive insights suggest that this period of interaction established a foundation for subsequent confrontations, as both societies adjusted expectations, tactics, and strategic priorities in anticipation of larger campaigns. In summary, early Roman encounters with Gaulish tribes were characterized by tactical skirmishes, diplomatic negotiation, and adaptive strategies on both sides. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates that these initial conflicts served as practical training grounds, revealing the strengths, vulnerabilities, and operational sophistication of Gallic forces. Interpretive analysis highlights that the combination of mobility, local knowledge, and flexible leadership allowed Gaulish communities to assert influence and resist Roman expansion, setting the stage for the extensive campaigns that would define the Gallic Wars. Early encounters escalated into full-scale campaigns, linking tactical experience, political negotiation, and strategic awareness to the broader trajectory of conflict between Gaul and Rome. The Gallic Wars transformed both Gaul and Rome irreversibly. Initiated in 58 BCE under the command of Gaius Julius Caesar, these campaigns aimed to secure Roman interests in Transalpine Gaul and expand political and military influence. Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico, supported by archaeological evidence from battlefields, fortifications, and Opida, provides a detailed record of both the campaigns and the organization of Gallic resistance. These wars highlight the complex interplay of tribal politics, military strategy, and social cohesion within Gaul. Caesar's campaigns began in eastern Gaul, confronting tribes such as the Helvetii, Sequani, and Suebi. Records indicate that Roman legions used coordinated maneuvers, fortified camps, and rapid forced marches to counter Gallic mobility and tribal alliances. Archaeological evidence, including remnants of temporary earthworks, siege works, and weapons caches, corroborates textual accounts, demonstrating both the intensity and systematic planning of operations. Interpretive analysis suggests that early victories allowed Rome to establish footholds, manipulate intertribal rivalries, and secure key routes for subsequent campaigns. Gallic tribes responded through both local resistance and pantribal coalitions. Vercingetorix of the Arverni emerged as a central figure in 52 BCE, unifying disparate tribes against the Roman advance. Caesar documents the mobilization of warbands, scorched earth strategies, and defensive positioning, particularly in central Gaul. Archaeological surveys at Opata and fortified sites confirm evidence of temporary abandonment, burn layers, and emergency fortifications, illustrating the practical and strategic application of resistance measures. Interpretive insights highlight that Vercingetorix's leadership represents one of the most coordinated expressions of Gallic political and military organization. The siege of Alesia epitomized the tactical complexity of the conflict. Roman legions, constructing extensive circumvallation and contravallation lines around the fortified hilltop settlement, sought to contain Vercingetorix's forces while defending against relieving Gallic armies. Archaeological investigations, including trench excavations, fortification remnants, and topographic analysis, confirm the dual-layered siege works described by Caesar. Interpretive analysis suggests that Alesia demonstrates the intersection of engineering skill, logistical management, and strategic foresight, illustrating both Roman military capability and the Gauls' determination to resist encirclement. Caesar's campaigns relied on both direct military engagement and psychological strategies. Displays of discipline, mobility, and engineering prowess undermined Gallic morale, while negotiation and clemency were employed selectively to divide coalitions. Archaeological finds, including weapons hoards, siege-related debris, and fortified supply points, provide material evidence of sustained operations and adaptive tactics. Interpretive insights suggest that the Roman approach combined technological, organizational, and political mechanisms to systematically weaken resistance without entirely destroying the social structure of Gaul. The impact of these campaigns on Gallic society was profound. Population displacement, fortification abandonment, and resource requisition disrupted local economies, while the consolidation of Roman authority redefined territorial control. Archaeological evidence of destroyed settlements, burned fields, and redistributed material culture supports the textual record of large-scale disruption. Interpretive analysis indicates that these effects were both immediate, impacting food security, settlement patterns, and military capacity, and long-term, shaping the subsequent integration of Gaul into the Roman provincial system. Intertribal dynamics during the wars also influenced the trajectory of resistance. Loyalty, rivalry, and negotiation among Gallic groups affected the scale and coordination of opposition to Rome. Caesar's commentary, corroborated by coin hoards and material culture distribution, suggests that some tribes allied with Rome for strategic advantage, while others maintained staunch opposition. Interpretive insights highlight that internal political fragmentation both hindered and occasionally strengthened collective resistance, emphasizing the systemic interplay between local governance, social cohesion, and military strategy. In summary, the Gallic Wars represent a decisive period in the historical trajectory of both Gaul and Rome. Archaeological and textual evidence documents the intensity, complexity, and strategic innovation of the campaigns, while interpretive analysis underscores the political, social, and military dimensions of resistance led by figures such as Vercingetorix. The combination of Roman engineering, tactical flexibility, and political negotiation, juxtaposed with Gaulish mobility, coalition building, and fortification strategies, demonstrates a high level of operational sophistication on both sides. The conclusion of the wars redefined Gaulish sovereignty, establishing Roman hegemony, reshaping tribal authority, and setting the stage for the integration of Gaul into the emerging provincial framework of the Roman Republic. Even after defeat, Gaulish identity persisted under Roman rule. Following the conclusion of the Gallic Wars in 50 BCE, Rome implemented systematic measures to integrate Gaul into its expanding provincial framework. Archaeological and textual evidence indicates the establishment of administrative centers, road networks, and fortified settlements, facilitating both governance and economic control. Caesar and subsequent Roman sources document the creation of provinces, legal standardization, and taxation systems designed to incorporate formerly autonomous tribes into the Roman polity. Administrative restructuring involved the reorganization of tribal territories into civitates, each centered on Opata or newly established Roman settlements. These administrative units served as both local governance centers and instruments of imperial oversight. Archaeological findings, including forum remains, inscriptions, and road systems, demonstrate the implementation of Roman urban planning principles, connecting settlements across Gaul and enhancing logistical coordination. Interpretive analysis suggests that these measures allowed Rome to exert authority efficiently while maintaining a degree of local self-governance, thereby reducing the likelihood of widespread rebellion. Economic integration accompanied political reorganization. Gaulish agriculture, metallurgy, and artisanal production were absorbed into Roman trade networks, while Roman coinage, weights, and market regulations standardized commercial activity. Archaeobotanical evidence and excavated workshops illustrate continuity in production alongside adaptation to Roman demand. Interpretive insights highlight that economic incorporation reinforced both dependency and prosperity, enabling Roman authorities to extract resources while sustaining local populations and maintaining social stability. Cultural integration was gradual and multifaceted. Latin language, Roman law, religious practices, and architectural styles were introduced, yet local traditions persisted. Archaeological evidence of hybrid material culture, such as Gallic-style torques, ceramics, and ritual deposits alongside Roman inscriptions and structures, demonstrates the persistence of indigenous identity within a Romanized framework. Interpretive analysis suggests that this cultural continuity provided a sense of communal cohesion and facilitated the negotiation of identity under imperial authority, highlighting the adaptive strategies of Gaulish elites and communities. Resistance did not disappear entirely. Caesar and later sources document sporadic uprisings and localized revolts, often concentrated in more remote or strategically significant regions. Archaeological evidence, including burned layers, hastily constructed fortifications, and weapons caches, confirms intermittent opposition to Roman control. Interpretive insights indicate that these pockets of resistance were both tactical and symbolic, reflecting ongoing negotiation of autonomy and the persistence of traditional leadership structures within a Roman-dominated landscape. Military occupation played a complementary role in post-war integration. Roman garrisons were established in key strategic locations, including river crossings, road junctions, and former tribal strongholds, facilitating rapid response to unrest and securing communication routes. Archaeological evidence of castra, watchtowers, and supply depots illustrates the spatial logic of control and the operational capacity of Roman forces to maintain order across diverse terrain. Interpretive analysis highlights that the combination of military presence and administrative infrastructure reinforced compliance while minimizing the need for large-scale punitive campaigns. The reorganization of religious structures further demonstrates the interaction of Roman and Gaulish systems. Druidic practices were restricted or adapted under Roman supervision, while temples, altars, and civic cults were constructed in accordance with Roman norms. Archaeological evidence of ritual continuity alongside newly introduced Roman religious artifacts suggests a negotiated cultural transition, allowing elements of Gaulish spiritual life to persist within the framework of imperial authority. Interpretive insights indicate that these adaptations reinforced social cohesion while promoting the ideological legitimacy of Roman rule. In summary, post-war integration combined administrative, economic, military, and cultural strategies to consolidate Roman authority in Gaul. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates both the efficiency of provincial organization and the persistence of local traditions, while interpretive analysis highlights the adaptive capacity of Gaulish communities to maintain identity, negotiate authority, and resist assimilation where feasible. The resulting synthesis of Roman control and indigenous resilience defined the political, economic, and cultural landscape of Gaul for the subsequent centuries. Roman dominance shaped the trajectory of Gaulish society for centuries, linking provincial administration, economic integration, and cultural adaptation to the long-term transformation of formerly independent tribal communities. Gaulish cities became pillars of the Roman provincial system. Following the consolidation of Roman authority, major settlements were reorganized or newly founded to serve administrative, economic, and strategic functions. Archaeological evidence indicates the construction of fora, basilicas, amphitheaters, baths, and temples following standardized Roman urban layouts, often superimposed upon pre-existing Gallic oppida. Excavations at Lyon, Lugdunum, Autun, Augustatinum, and Trier reveal comprehensive planning, including orthogonal street grids, drainage systems, and public infrastructure designed to facilitate governance, commerce, and social integration. The integration of Gaulish elites into administrative roles was a critical component of urban consolidation. Local leaders were incorporated into municipal councils, curiae, and provincial administration, serving as intermediaries between Roman authorities and indigenous populations. Epigraphic evidence, including inscriptions and honorific monuments, documents appointments of Gallic magistrates, priests, and civic benefactors, illustrating both formal recognition and practical collaboration. Interpretive analysis suggests that this integration strengthened compliance, legitimized Roman authority locally, and maintained continuity of social hierarchy while fostering elite investment in urban development. Urban planning extended beyond functional administration to economic coordination. Markets, workshops, and storage facilities were strategically situated to optimize trade, resource distribution, and tax collection. Archaeobotanical and archaeozoological data demonstrate the systematic provisioning of urban centers, supporting population growth and sustaining military logistics. Interpretive insights indicate that these economic frameworks facilitated the assimilation of regional economies into imperial networks, linking Gaulish agricultural and artisanal production to Mediterranean markets. Fortifications continued to play a role in urban security. Many Roman cities in Gaul incorporated remnants of hillforts or constructed new defensive walls to control access, manage civic order, and protect strategic routes. Excavations reveal gates, bastions, and watchtowers, providing evidence of sustained concern for both internal and external threats. Interpretive analysis suggests that fortifications not only secured physical space, but also symbolized the authority of both Roman administration and integrated Gallic elites, reinforcing the social and political order. Religious and civic structures were central to urban identity. Temples, altars, and public spaces were constructed following Roman architectural norms, yet often incorporated local iconography or accommodated traditional rituals. Archaeological finds at sites such as Alesia and Vienne indicate continuity of indigenous spiritual practices alongside Roman cults. Interpretive insights highlight that this coexistence facilitated cultural negotiation, enabling populations to adapt to new governance structures without wholly abandoning local identity. The integration of infrastructure enhanced communication and governance. Roads connected urban centers to military outposts, rural settlements, and trade networks, allowing rapid mobilization of resources and coordination of administration. Archaeological survey data confirms the systematic construction of roads, bridges, and way stations, often following pre-existing routes used by Gallic tribes. Interpretive analysis suggests that these networks not only improved provincial administration but also reinforced economic and social cohesion, linking formerly dispersed populations into a coordinated imperial system. Urban development also fostered literacy, record-keeping, and legal codification. Gaulish elites adopted Roman administrative practices, including epigraphy, tax documentation, and municipal decrees. Inscriptions indicate the use of Latin as both an official and public medium, while localized adaptations reflect the persistence of Gallic cultural identity. Interpretive insights suggest that literacy and bureaucratic integration enabled the efficient implementation of Roman law, facilitated elite participation in governance, and institutionalized long-term social and political transformation. In summary, urban development and administration during the peak of Roman Gaul reflect a systematic transformation of societal structures. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates the reorganization of settlements, incorporation of local elites, strategic economic planning, defensive fortification, and integration of religious practices. Interpretive analysis highlights the interplay between imperial authority and indigenous adaptation, showing how urbanization facilitated governance, economic integration, and cultural negotiation while sustaining elements of Gallic identity. Cultural exchange reshaped daily life and artistic expression, linking administrative organization, infrastructure, and elite collaboration to the broader trajectory of Romanization and societal peak in Gaul. A new hybrid culture emerged, balancing Roman structure with Gallic tradition. Following the consolidation of Roman authority, Gaul experienced a significant process of cultural synthesis, integrating indigenous practices with Roman institutional, artistic, and religious frameworks. Archaeological and epigraphic evidence demonstrates that this blending occurred across multiple domains, including language, religion, coinage, architecture, and visual arts, producing a distinct provincial identity that was simultaneously Roman and Gallic. Religious practice was a primary domain of cultural integration. Temples dedicated to Roman deities were constructed in major urban centers, while local sanctuaries continued to serve traditional ritual needs. Archaeological evidence, including altars, votive offerings, and inscriptions, reveals the coexistence of Roman cults, such as those of Jupiter and Mars, with indigenous deities venerated through localized practices. Interpretive analysis suggests that this duality facilitated social cohesion, allowing populations to engage with imperial religious structures without abandoning long-standing spiritual traditions. Artistic expression similarly reflected hybridization. Metalwork, ceramics, and decorative objects exhibit stylistic blending. Traditional Latin motifs appeared alongside Roman iconography and techniques. Excavated torques, fibulae, and weaponry display intricate patterns derived from Gaulish artistry, while Roman influences are evident in relief sculpture, portraiture, and architectural ornamentation. Interpretive insights indicate that these hybrid objects functioned as markers of social status, cultural negotiation, and identity, reflecting the negotiation of local autonomy within imperial frameworks. Language and literacy demonstrate another dimension of synthesis. Latin was introduced as the administrative and literary language, used for inscriptions, legal documents, and official correspondence. However, epigraphic evidence also indicates the persistence of Gallic personal and tribal names, formulas, and phrases within Roman contexts. Interpretive analysis highlights that this linguistic blending served both practical and symbolic purposes, facilitating integration into provincial administration while preserving a sense of local identity and continuity. Coinage provides tangible evidence of cultural and political adaptation. Gallic mints began producing coins bearing Roman iconography, such as emperors' profiles, alongside traditional motifs or inscriptions in indigenous scripts. Numismatic analysis suggests that these coins functioned not only as economic instruments but also as vehicles of political messaging, signaling loyalty to Rome while acknowledging regional identities. Interpretive insights underscore that the circulation of hybrid coinage reinforced both economic integration and cultural continuity, embedding provincial authority within everyday transactions. Architectural synthesis is also evident in urban and rural contexts. Public buildings, baths, amphitheaters, and roads adhered to Roman standards, yet domestic and ritual spaces often incorporated traditional Gallic design elements. Archaeological excavations reveal floor mosaics, wall frescoes, and construction techniques that blend Roman structural conventions with local aesthetic preferences. Interpretive analysis suggests that architectural adaptation reflected both practical utility and negotiated identity, signaling participation in the imperial system while maintaining regional distinctiveness. Education and elite culture further reinforced cultural synthesis. Gaulish aristocrats received training in Latin rhetoric, Roman law, and administrative practice while continuing to participate in local governance and ritual functions. Epigraphic evidence, including inscriptions commemorating civic benefactions, public office, and religious duties, illustrates the dual role of elites as intermediaries between Roman authorities and indigenous communities. Interpretive insights highlight that this fusion of cultural competencies facilitated social mobility, promoted administrative efficiency, and preserved elements of traditional authority within a Romanized framework. In summary, cultural synthesis in Roman Gaul produced a hybrid provincial identity that integrated religious, artistic, linguistic, and administrative elements. Archaeological, numismatic, and epigraphic evidence demonstrates the coexistence and blending of Roman and Gaulish traditions, while interpretive analysis emphasizes continuity, adaptation, and negotiation of identity. This synthesis enabled Gaulish society to maintain cohesion and resilience under Roman governance, reflecting a dynamic interplay between imperial imposition and local cultural agency. Economic and military integration cemented Gaul's role in the empire, linking cultural hybridization with broader societal and strategic consolidation under Roman authority. Roman Gaul was a keystone of Mediterranean commerce. Following the consolidation of imperial control, Gaul's economy became deeply integrated into the Roman trade and administrative system, facilitating the flow of goods, resources, and wealth across the empire. Archaeological evidence, including road networks, warehouses, coin hoards, and settlement excavations, illustrates the systematic development of infrastructure that supported both regional prosperity and imperial extraction. Road construction was a central mechanism of economic integration. Roman engineers built a network of paved roads linking major settlements, military forts, and ports, enabling rapid movement of goods, military units, and officials. Sites such as the Via Agrippa, connecting Lugdunum, modern Lyon, to the Rhone, Saône, and Rhine corridors, demonstrate engineering precision, including bridges, drainage systems, and milestone markers. Interpretive insights indicate that these roads not only facilitated commerce but also enhanced administrative efficiency, allowing Rome to monitor, tax, and regulate economic activity throughout Gaul. Trade networks extended beyond internal connectivity, linking Gaul to the broader Mediterranean economy. Gaulish products, including grain, livestock, timber, and metal ores, were exchanged for Roman wine, olive oil, luxury goods, and coinage. Archaeological findings of amphorae, imported ceramics, and coin hoards in southern and central Gaul confirm these trade flows. Interpretive analysis suggests that integration into Mediterranean trade stabilized local economies, encouraged specialization, and reinforced provincial loyalty, while providing Rome with critical resources to sustain military and administrative operations. Agricultural expansion supported both urban centers and export demands. Pollen studies, farmstead excavations, and archaeozoological evidence indicate intensive cultivation of cereals, vineyards, and pastures, alongside livestock management. Roman techniques, including plowing methods, irrigation, and crop rotation, were adopted in Gaul, enhancing productivity and supporting population growth. Interpretive insights highlight that agricultural efficiency underpinned urban provisioning, trade surplus, and military logistics, linking local economic adaptation to imperial strategic priorities. Resource exploitation extended to mining and metallurgy. Gaulish deposits of iron, tin, gold, and silver were systematically extracted and processed, often in proximity to Roman settlements or road networks. Archaeological evidence from mine sites, smelting facilities, and metalworking workshops indicates coordinated production for both local consumption and imperial requisition. Interpretive analysis suggests that resource management was critical to military and economic stability, providing materials for weaponry, coinage, and construction while reinforcing Gaul's integration into the Roman economic system. Infrastructure development also supported urban growth and administrative efficiency. Warehouses, granaries, and marketplaces were strategically positioned in Oppida and Roman colonies to streamline storage, distribution, and taxation. Excavations reveal planning that balanced local accessibility with connectivity to imperial routes. Interpretive insights highlight that such infrastructure facilitated centralized oversight without entirely displacing traditional economic practices, demonstrating adaptive integration that preserved regional functionality while serving imperial objectives. The cumulative effect of these developments was the creation of an interconnected economic and logistical framework. Roman roads, trade flows, agricultural intensification, and resource exploitation combined to stabilize provincial society, reinforce elite authority, and sustain military operations. Archaeological and textual evidence illustrates a system capable of supporting large urban populations, facilitating interregional commerce, and embedding Gaul as a reliable and productive component of the empire. In summary, economic integration and infrastructure during the peak era of Roman Gaul established a durable foundation for both local prosperity and imperial control. Archaeological data confirms extensive roads, trade nodes, productive agriculture, and resource management, while interpretive analysis demonstrates the strategic, administrative, and societal benefits of this integration. This systematic development enabled Gaul to function as a critical hub within the Roman Mediterranean economy, consolidating both material wealth and political stability. Ending transition. This peak era preceded structural strains and eventual decline, linking economic integration, administrative complexity, and resource dependence to the broader trajectory of Gaul's transformation and the challenges that would emerge in later centuries. Beneath the veneer of Roman control, unrest simmered across Gaul. By the late 2nd and 3rd centuries CE, a combination of social, economic, and administrative pressures challenged the stability of provincial governance. Tacitus, in his Annals, and Cassius Dio, in Roman history, document instances of unrest, highlighting localized uprisings and protests against taxation, conscription, and the erosion of traditional elite privileges. Archaeological evidence corroborates these accounts, with destruction layers, abandoned settlements, and hastily rebuilt fortifications signaling episodic violence and disruption across the province. Economic pressures played a significant role in fueling unrest. Increased taxation to support imperial campaigns and urban infrastructure placed burdens on both rural and urban populations. Archaeobotanical and numismatic evidence indicates shifts in agricultural production and coin circulation, reflecting economic stress and fluctuations in local markets. Interpretive analysis suggests that the strain of resource extraction, coupled with the administrative imposition of Roman fiscal systems, eroded popular compliance and fostered resentment among Gaulish communities. Social tensions arose from the uneven integration of local elites into imperial structures. While some aristocratic families benefited from Roman citizenship, municipal offices, and trade opportunities, others experienced marginalization or competition from newly empowered elites. Inscriptions and funerary monuments reveal variations in social status and civic participation, illustrating stratification and localized tensions. Interpretive insights indicate that these disparities contributed to fragmented loyalty, weakening the collective resilience of Gaulish communities and making coordinated opposition to imperial authority sporadic but recurrent. Sporadic revolts provide tangible evidence of these pressures. Archaeological investigations document burned oppida, temporary fortifications, and disrupted settlements dating to the late 2nd and 3rd centuries CE. For example, evidence from sites in the Rhone Valley and northeastern Gaul indicates that communities resisted imperial oversight, whether through direct confrontation or temporary withdrawal from administrative structures. Interpretive analysis highlights that these uprisings were often localized, reflecting the practical limits of coordinated resistance within the constraints of Roman military and administrative presence. Military factors also exacerbated internal instability. The withdrawal of legions for campaigns elsewhere, combined with reliance on local garrisons and federated troops, reduced immediate Roman capacity to suppress dissent. Archaeological evidence, including traces of temporary fortifications and militia encampments, demonstrates attempts by local populations to assert control in the absence of sustained imperial oversight. Interpretive insights suggest that this uneven military presence both encouraged rebellion and underscored the systemic vulnerabilities inherent in provincial management during periods of imperial strain. Religious and cultural factors intersected with these social and economic pressures. The persistence of Gallic religious practices and local cults, often in tension with official Roman cults, sometimes served as focal points for resistance. Archaeological evidence of ritual destruction, renewed sanctuary use, or altered ceremonial practices indicates that religious identity could reinforce local solidarity and motivate opposition. Interpretive analysis highlights the interplay between cultural persistence and political dissent, showing that ideological as well as material factors influenced the nature of unrest. In summary, internal strains and local revolts in late Roman Gaul reflected a combination of economic pressures, social stratification, military vulnerabilities, and cultural persistence. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates the episodic nature of unrest, while interpretive insights illustrate the systemic causes undermining Roman control. These factors collectively weakened provincial structures, creating conditions in which Gaul became increasingly vulnerable to external pressures, both military and political. Weakened structures made Gaul vulnerable to external pressures, linking internal instability to the broader processes of invasion, migration, and political transformation that would redefine the province in the centuries to follow. New peoples pressed upon Gaul's borders, reshaping its political landscape. From the late 3rd century CE onward, waves of Germanic migrations, including the Alemanni, Franks, and other tribal confederations, exerted sustained pressure on Roman provincial defenses. Historical sources such as Ammianus Marcellinus and the Notitia Dignitatum document incursions, the establishment of frontier settlements, and the increasing reliance on federated troops to secure contested regions. Archaeological evidence from fortifications, battle sites, and material culture corroborates these accounts, demonstrating both the scale and impact of external pressures. The collapse of frontier defenses accelerated during this period. Roman limes along the Rhine and upper Rhone valleys were frequently breached, and many fortifications were abandoned, repurposed, or strengthened with ad hoc earthworks and palisades. Excavations at sites such as Trier and Mainz reveal layers of destruction and reconstruction, alongside imported Germanic material culture, indicating direct contact and conflict. Interpretive analysis suggests that the weakening of formal military infrastructure was both a cause and consequence of repeated incursions, highlighting the vulnerability of the provincial system under late imperial strain. Germanic settlement within Gaul contributed to administrative transformation. Federated tribes, initially employed as foederati to defend borders, gradually assumed local authority in regions where Roman presence had diminished. Inscriptions, burial practices, and settlement patterns indicate that these groups integrated into former Roman administrative frameworks, adapting urban centers, taxation practices, and legal customs to their own governance structures. Interpretive insights demonstrate that the incorporation of external populations was both pragmatic and transformative, facilitating continuity while accelerating the erosion of traditional Roman provincial authority. The Frankish Confederation, in particular, emerged as a decisive force during the 4th and 5th centuries CE. Sources such as Gregory of Tours describe Frankish expansion into northern and eastern Gaul, while archaeological evidence, including weapon deposits, burial sites, and fortified settlements, documents the consolidation of territory and socio-political influence. Interpretive analysis highlights that the Franks' integration of Roman administrative practices with indigenous Germanic customs laid the foundation for the post-Roman political landscape, blending continuity with innovation in governance. Economic and social disruption accompanied these invasions. Urban centers experienced depopulation, decreased trade activity, and the breakdown of centralized market systems. Archaeobotanical and numismatic data indicate contraction in agricultural production and monetary circulation, reflecting both localized instability and wider structural pressures. Interpretive insights suggest that these economic shifts weakened the capacity of Roman institutions to maintain authority, necessitating adaptation through localized governance, military federations, and negotiated settlement with external groups. Cultural interactions were also significant. Germanic settlers adopted elements of Roman material culture, architecture, and religious practice while introducing distinct funerary traditions, legal customs, and military organization. Archaeological evidence from cemeteries, fortified villages, and domestic sites demonstrates this blending of cultural traits, indicating both continuity of Roman influence and the emergence of hybridized identities. Interpretive analysis emphasizes that these interactions facilitated the transition from Roman provincial society to early medieval polities, laying the groundwork for subsequent political and social structures in Gaul. In summary, invasions and external pressures during the late Roman Empire transformed Gaul's political, economic, and cultural landscape. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates the erosion of frontier defenses, the integration of federated Germanic groups, and the emergence of hybrid administrative and cultural structures. Interpretive analysis highlights how these processes collectively redefined authority, sovereignty, and identity, establishing the conditions for the post-Roman kingdoms of early medieval Europe. These changes led to the emergence of new political entities, linking external pressures, internal adaptation, and cultural negotiation to the formation of early medieval Gaulish polities. Gaul was not extinguished. It evolved into the foundation of medieval Europe. Following the collapse of centralized Roman authority in the 5th century CE, the territory of Gaul underwent significant political reorganization. The Merovingian dynasty of the Franks established dominion over northern and central regions, consolidating former Roman provinces into new political entities. Textual sources, including Gregory of Tours' Historia Francorum, document the establishment of royal courts, administrative divisions, and legal codification that integrated elements of Roman governance with Germanic customs. Archaeological evidence from fortified settlements, burial sites, and early urban centers corroborates this transformation. Continuity of Gallic culture persisted amidst these changes. Latin remained the administrative and liturgical language, while vernacular Gallic dialects gradually evolved into early Romance languages. Excavations of domestic, religious, and civic sites reveal continuity in pottery, architectural techniques, and iconographic motifs, demonstrating that local artistic traditions adapted to the new political and cultural context. Interpretive analysis suggests that the synthesis of Roman and Gallic elements facilitated social cohesion, providing a cultural bridge between antiquity and the early medieval period. Legal traditions also illustrate continuity and adaptation. Roman law, codified in provincial statutes, merged with Frankish customary law to create hybrid legal frameworks governing property, inheritance, and dispute resolution. Manuscripts and inscriptions from the 6th and 7th centuries indicate the retention of Roman legal principles alongside the introduction of Germanic judicial practices, reflecting pragmatic integration. Interpretive insights highlight that this legal continuity provided stability, legitimized emerging political authorities, and maintained social order during a period of broader structural transformation. Economic structures evolved to accommodate shifting political realities. Urban centers contracted in some regions but persisted in strategic locations, supporting trade, artisanal production, and resource extraction under new rulers. Archaeological surveys indicate the continued use of roads, markets, and storage facilities, demonstrating adaptive management of infrastructure inherited from the Roman period. Interpretive analysis emphasizes that this economic continuity enabled the Merovingian and early Frankish states to maintain regional stability and project authority across diverse territories. Religious institutions played a central role in cultural and political continuity. Christianity, increasingly institutionalized under the late Roman Church, provided a framework for elite legitimacy, education, and ritual cohesion. Archaeological evidence from church foundations, monastic sites, and episcopal centers demonstrates the persistence of ecclesiastical organization, often coexisting with residual local traditions. Interpretive insights suggest that religious networks facilitated the transmission of administrative knowledge, literacy, and cultural memory, linking late antique Gaul to emerging medieval structures. Military organization also reflected both continuity and innovation. Former Roman fortifications were adapted by Merovingian and Frankish rulers to serve as defensive strongholds and administrative centers. Archaeological evidence of reoccupied oppida, hilltop forts, and fortified villas demonstrates the reuse of imperial infrastructure to consolidate territorial control. Interpretive analysis highlights that these adaptations allowed successor states to maintain security, project authority, and integrate local populations under new governance structures. In summary, the transition from late Roman Gaul to early medieval kingdoms was characterized by both transformation and continuity. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates the establishment of Merovingian and Frankish domains, adaptation of legal and administrative systems, persistence of Gallic cultural and linguistic traditions, and integration of inherited infrastructure. Interpretive insights emphasize that this period represents an evolutionary phase rather than a rupture, laying the foundation for medieval European society. Legacy is found not only in politics but also in culture and scholarship, linking centuries of Gallic innovation and adaptation to the enduring influence of the region in European history. The Gauls' imprint endures in the landscapes, languages, and legends of modern Europe. Linguistic traces of Gaulish persist in regional toponyms, hydronyms, and certain vocabulary within modern French, particularly in areas corresponding to ancient tribal territories. Scholars such as Lambert, 1994, and Delamar, 2003, have catalogued hundreds of Gaulish-derived place names, including Lugdunum, Lion, Bibract, and Remy, demonstrating continuity of nomenclature and settlement identity. These linguistic remnants provide evidence of the lasting integration of Gallic culture into the fabric of European geography. Artistic motifs originating in Latin culture influenced subsequent decorative traditions. Archaeological studies indicate that curvilinear designs, stylized animal motifs, and metalworking techniques were transmitted through Roman, Merovingian, and Carolingian workshops, informing medieval art, metalwork, and jewelry. Interpretive analysis suggests that these visual conventions persisted not merely as ornamental practices but as markers of identity, linking local populations to their Gallic heritage while adapting to evolving political and cultural frameworks. Folk traditions, festivals, and narrative motifs in modern European culture also reflect Gallic roots. Elements of seasonal celebration, ritual symbolism, and heroic storytelling recorded in medieval chronicles often trace back to Gaulish practices, albeit transformed through Roman, Christian, and regional reinterpretations. Interpretive insights highlight that the retention of these cultural elements, even in adapted form, demonstrates both resilience and adaptability, ensuring that the memory of Gaulish societal norms continue to shape communal life across centuries. The Gauls also contributed to the formation of French national identity in later periods. Historiographical works from the Renaissance through the 19th century frequently invoked Gallic heritage as a foundational narrative, linking resistance to Roman and later invaders with enduring themes of independence and cultural distinctiveness. Sources such as Du Cange and Michelet document these reinterpretations, which incorporated historical scholarship, literature, and civic symbolism. Interpretive analysis suggests that the elevation of Gallic identity served both mnemonic and ideological functions, reinforcing collective memory and legitimizing political structures. Cultural continuity is further evidenced in material practices. Excavated artifacts, including ceramic forms, metal ornaments, and tools, reveal persistent stylistic conventions that influenced local craftsmanship over successive centuries. Interpretive insights indicate that these material continuities facilitated the transmission of technical knowledge, aesthetic preferences, and symbolic meaning, linking late prehistoric and Roman Gaul to medieval and early modern cultural production. Education and historical memory contributed to the endurance of Gallic heritage. Medieval chronicles, monastic records, and legal codices often reference Gallic tribes, leaders, and cultural practices, preserving narratives that informed both scholarly inquiry and civic identity. Epigraphic and manuscript evidence demonstrates that knowledge of Gaulish society, language, and law was selectively transmitted and adapted, enabling successive generations to interpret the past in ways that reinforced continuity while accommodating contemporary political and cultural frameworks. In summary, the cultural influence of the Gauls extends from linguistic remnants and place names to artistic motifs, folk traditions, and historical memory. Archaeological, textual, and material evidence documents the persistence and adaptation of Gallic heritage across Roman, medieval, and early modern contexts. Interpretive insights emphasize that these elements collectively illustrate long-term cultural continuity, demonstrating how a society once considered conquered and assimilated remained embedded in European identity, memory, and artistic practice. Legacy is also evident in scholarship and archaeology, linking cultural persistence to the systematic study and interpretation of Gaulish history over the past 2 millennia. Our understanding of the Gauls is shaped as much by artifacts as by the historians who recorded them. Archaeology has played a central role in reconstructing Gallic society, providing tangible evidence of settlements, fortifications, art, and daily life. Excavations at key sites such as Bibract, Gergovia, and Alesia have revealed apota layouts, metalworking workshops, and ritual deposits, offering detailed insights into urban planning, economic networks, and religious practices. Material culture, including torques, weapons, ceramics, and coins supplements textual sources, allowing scholars to evaluate the structure and complexity of Gallic communities independent of Roman narratives. Historical accounts, particularly Julius Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico, remain foundational but require critical interpretation. Caesar's writings, while detailed in their descriptions of tribal alliances, military tactics, and political organization, were composed within a political context that emphasized Roman superiority and justification for conquest. Modern historiography, including analyses by Cunliffe, 1997, and Drinkwater, 2007, employs comparative methods, cross-referencing archaeological data, epigraphy, and numismatic evidence to identify potential exaggerations, omissions, and interpretive biases. Interpretive insights suggest that while Caesar provides valuable chronological and geographical information, his portrayal of the Gauls as fractious or barbaric must be tempered by material and contextual evidence. Material analysis has refined understanding of Gallic technological and economic sophistication. Metallurgical studies of iron, bronze, and gold artifacts reveal advanced smelting, alloying, and artistic techniques, contradicting earlier perceptions of technological inferiority. Excavated grain storage facilities, trade goods, and road networks indicate complex economic organization and integration into wider continental systems. Interpretive analysis highlights that these findings challenge simplistic notions of barbarism and underscore the Gauls' adaptive capacity in governance, economy, and material culture. Historiographical debates continue to refine the interpretation of Gallic identity. Questions regarding the extent of tribal cohesion, social stratification, and cultural uniformity are informed by both textual evidence and archaeological distribution patterns. Isotopic and bioarchaeological studies of human remains, for example, provide insights into mobility, diet, and interregional interaction, allowing scholars to reconstruct social networks and patterns of migration. Interpretive insights suggest that Gallic identity was fluid and context-dependent, shaped by geography, alliances, and interactions with Roman and neighboring cultures rather than monolithic ethnic traits. Scholarly approaches increasingly emphasize multidisciplinary perspectives. Archaeobotany, geoarchaeology, and material science combine with classical philology and comparative history to produce nuanced reconstructions of daily life, settlement hierarchy, and ritual practice. Interpretive analysis demonstrates that these integrated methods mitigate the limitations of fragmentary textual sources, providing a balanced framework that accounts for both indigenous agency and imperial influence. This approach allows modern audiences to engage with the Gauls as a dynamic, adaptive society rather than a static historical stereotype. Modern debates also explore the symbolic and political uses of Gallic history. Nationalist and regionalist interpretations in France and surrounding territories have invoked Gallic heritage in constructing narratives of identity, independence, and cultural continuity. Scholarship critically examines these appropriations, emphasizing the need to distinguish between empirical evidence and ideological projection. Interpretive insights underline that awareness of historiographical context is essential for understanding both ancient sources and contemporary interpretations of Gallic legacy. In summary, the study of Gallic archaeology and historiography reveals a complex interplay between material evidence and textual narrative. Excavations, artifact analysis, and multidisciplinary research challenge earlier biases, refine understanding of societal organization, and illuminate cultural continuity. Critical engagement with sources, including Caesar and later chroniclers, allows scholars to reconstruct Gallic life with greater precision, emphasizing adaptability, economic sophistication, and regional diversity. Interpretive insights highlight that modern understanding depends on both the artifacts preserved in the ground and the methodological rigor applied by historians and archaeologists. Ultimately, the Gauls story is a case study in cultural resilience, linking centuries of adaptation, integration, and survival to the enduring imprint of their society in European history. From battlefield tactics to tribal law, the Gauls offer insights into human organization and adaptation. Their military practices, political systems, and social structures demonstrate patterns of flexibility, strategic coordination, and cultural integration that influenced not only contemporary Roman interactions, but also the broader evolution of European societies. By examining these elements, scholars can trace the mechanisms by which decentralized societies managed internal cohesion, external threats, and resource allocation over centuries. Gaulish warfare provides a primary case study in adaptive military organization. Tribal warbands, coordinated confederacies, and seasonal levies allowed for rapid mobilization and tactical flexibility, as evidenced in Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico and corroborated by archaeological finds such as weapon deposits, chariot remnants, and fortification patterns. Interpretive analysis indicates that the Gauls' reliance on mobility, ambush strategies, and terrain familiarity challenged even the disciplined Roman legions, demonstrating how environmental knowledge and decentralized command structures can offset disparities in technological or numerical advantage. Political organization further illustrates lessons in governance. Gaulish confederacies operated through assemblies, councils, and chieftain leadership, balancing local autonomy with the need for coordinated action. Epigraphic evidence, historical accounts, and material culture reveal mechanisms for negotiation, conflict resolution, and collective decision-making. Interpretive insights highlight that this system maintains stability within a highly heterogeneous population, providing a model for understanding decentralized governance and consensus-based leadership in pre-modern societies. Social structures also reveal the interplay between hierarchy, ritual, and cultural cohesion. The druids' role in adjudication, religious guidance, and education exemplifies how spiritual and civic authority intersected, reinforcing norms and mediating disputes. Archaeological evidence of ritual sites, burial practices, and ceremonial artifacts supports the centrality of these institutions. Interpretive analysis suggests that the integration of social, religious, and legal functions strengthened internal cohesion, enabling Gaulish communities to maintain identity and resilience under both internal and external pressures. The interaction between Gaulish society and Rome offers broader strategic lessons. Roman military campaigns, administrative adaptation, and provincial governance were informed by the challenges posed by Gaulish resistance and organization. Tacitus, Caesar, and later historians document how Roman commanders adjusted tactics, diplomacy, and logistics to accommodate Gaulish mobility, tribal alliances, and social complexity. Interpretive insights emphasize that understanding adversary organization and cultural context was essential for imperial management, illustrating the broader applicability of Gaulish case studies to military and political theory. Economic and infrastructural practices provide additional lessons. The Gauls' integration into Mediterranean trade, adoption of Roman technologies, and urban planning reveal the capacity of indigenous societies to absorb, adapt, and optimize external innovations. Archaeological evidence from oppida, roads, and marketplaces demonstrates practical application of organizational principles to economic and civic life. Interpretive analysis suggests that successful adaptation relies on both selective adoption of external practices and preservation of core local structures, offering a model for resilience in transitional societies. Finally, the long-term influence of Gaulish societal structures on European development underscores the value of historical analysis. Concepts of law, governance, and military organization persisted through Roman integration and into Merovingian and Frankish domains, shaping early medieval political and social frameworks. Material culture, linguistic continuity, and ritual traditions further attest to the enduring impact of Gaulish systems on European identity and institutional evolution. Interpretive insights highlight that studying these structures provides critical understanding of the mechanisms by which societies negotiate continuity and change over centuries. In summary, the Gauls offer enduring lessons across military, political, and social domains. Archaeological, textual, and interpretive evidence demonstrates the effectiveness of decentralized governance, adaptive warfare, and integrated social institutions. Their interactions with Rome, integration into imperial structures, and continuity into early medieval Europe underscore the broader relevance of their societal innovations. These insights contribute to the study of European history, human organization, and the dynamics of cultural resilience. By tracing their trajectory from origins to legacy, The Gauls exemplify the evolution of a civilization, linking archaeological evidence, historical documentation, and interpretive scholarship into a comprehensive understanding of societal adaptation and endurance. If you've enjoyed this in-depth exploration of the Gauls, their rise, resilience, and legacy, consider supporting the continuation of these long-form historical documentaries. Subscribe to Nightfall History to join a community that values calm, evidence-based storytelling, where each episode illuminates the civilizations that shaped our world. Your engagement, a like, a comment, or sharing this film helps bring more rigorously researched histories to audiences who seek clarity and depth over noise. And as always, thank you for watching and for keeping history alive through curiosity and understanding.